Ready? Good evening. I call this meeting of the Vista Unified School District to order at 6 o'clock. Please stand for the flag salute. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we'll take roll call. Trustee Kelly. Here. Trustee Morocco. Here. Trustee Vargas.
Here.
Trustee Smithfield. Here. Student Board Member Allison Gadis. Here. Student Board Member Dana Martinez.
Here.
Student Board Member Fatima Ramirez. And Student Board Member Gia Farias.
Here.
Thank you guys for being here. We're all present and accounted for. All right. We have our land acknowledgement next. We acknowledge that the Payom-Kawicham, the people of the West, as the traditional land caretakers of the land on which Vista Unified School District was built and its surrounding traditional cultural landscapes. Today, the Payom-Kawicham are known as Luiseño and are made up of 7 bands: La Jolla, Paula, Palma, Pachanga, Rincon, San Luis Rey, and Saboba. We, Vista Unified School District, are mindful of the indigenous peoples in this place, and we pay our respects to the Luiseño, past, present, and future. We are grateful to have the opportunity to be part of this community in Luiseño territory and to honor their history, culture, and perseverance of spirit. Thank you. All right, there were no actions taken in closed session. And before we start, I wanted to read this out. It's been a while, so I'll go ahead and read it for our new student board members. Before we get started, I'd like to say that the board appreciates and supports stakeholder input at all of our meetings. Engagement by members of the public in civic matters is a cornerstone of our democracy. Everyone should have a chance to express their opinions within the guidelines the board has established for its meeting so that we are able to conduct the meeting effectively and efficiently. During the meeting, there will be a time for the public to comment on matters not on the agenda. In addition, members of the public may comment on specific agenda items after I, as the board president, ask for public comment on an item. Until it is your turn to speak, or if you're just here to observe the meeting, please refrain from any behavior that prevents others from participating in the meeting or that disrupts the board's ability to conduct the business of the board. This includes any conduct that prevents members of the board, district staff, or the person making public comments from speaking. We also ask that when you are called upon, you address the board, only the board. While we assume that members of the public intend to participate in the meeting in a civil manner, and while legitimate criticism of the board is protected speech, we will not tolerate any threats of violence made to board members, staff, or to other members of the public. In the event of threat of violence, the individual will be removed from the room whenever possible and will be referred to law enforcement. In the event that the meeting is disrupted in a manner that prevents the board from proceeding with the agenda items for the meeting, we may choose to recess the meeting until order is restored. If order cannot be restored after a recess, we may choose to clear the room, move the meeting to a location where it will no longer be disrupted, or adjourn the meeting. And I also wanted to remind all of us and the public of our values of respect, trust, collaboration, equity, and kindness. And those are values that everyone in this district should adhere to. So, all right, thank you. Next on the agenda is 4A, approval of the agenda.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda.
So moved.
A second.
Moved by trustee Kelly and seconded by trustee Morocco. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Me.
Any abstentions? All right, the agenda is approved for 1. Next is 5, the superintendent's comments.
All right, thank you, President Alvarado. Good evening, board members, student board members, welcome. So this is an exciting time of the year because we bring on our newest, youngest board members. I want to officially welcome you here. We appreciate you being here. Each of them came to an orientation. They learned a little bit about their role. We went through a whole bunch of different documents. So we truly appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit about your role before you're here. It's a tradition to have the principals introduce their board members. We do have 2 exceptions tonight. One principal's on his way from a doctor's appointment, so he may be a little late. So Rachel may have to read it for them. And then we have another one on leave. So we'll bring Rachel up when the timing's right. But let's first start with our student board member from Mission Vista High School, Principal Jeremy Walden. Come on up.
Welcome, Mr.
All right.
Good evening, President Alvarado, board members, Dr. Doyle, student board members, congratulations. I am pleased to be here tonight to introduce the student board rep for Mission Vista this year in Allison Gaddis. She is an outstanding student. She's super involved in tons of clubs and programs on campus. She's part of our leadership cohort on our student senate, which is relaunching this school year. And she actually approached me almost 2 years ago, asking for an opportunity to serve as our student board rep. And I said, we typically save that for seniors, but in the first couple of weeks of school, welcomed her into the office, and super excited for her to have the opportunity and to be another voice for Mission Vista High. So thank you.
So welcome, Angela. Can you come up with for a minute? I just want to get a quick picture with the 2 of you so I can send it to her friend. Only happens once. Perfect. Excellent. Got it. All right. Thank you, Mr. Walden. Now we have Vista High School, Principal Megan Ratliff, and then if the Vista High board, student board member could come up with Mrs. Ratliff, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, so it is a pleasure and a privilege to speak to you this evening. Welcome, thank you very much. I would like to introduce you to Dana Martinez, and we are so proud that she's our representative from Vista High School. When we interviewed her, she spoke so eloquently about her many accomplishments. She's an IB candidate, she's a cheerleader, she's on ASB, she's in Buddies Club and Character Leaders. She really does so much, and we asked her, what is the key to your success? And I loved her answer. She said, my planner is me. I love to make time management a challenge for myself. And as a school that just adopted Avid strategies, hearing that was just so joyful for us. So we love her as an example of and a representative of our school. So thank you and welcome, Dana.
Thank you. All right, and we have Rachel here that will represent Murray High School. So come on up, Rachel, and our student representative for Murray High School.
Sorry.
I love this.
And again, Dr. Miller would love to be here, but he's out ill. So that's why we have Rachel.
So just pretend Rachel the doctor, because I'll be standing in for 2 doctors. Fatima Ramirez is a junior at Murray High School. She grew up in Vista, attended Beaulieu, Maryland, and Vapa. Then attended Vista Magnet Middle School. For high school, she started at Mission Vista before transferring to Murray. Fatima enjoys playing Crossy Road and enjoys crochet. I do too. She's the proud mother to her 4-month-old daughter, Juliet. As a child, she dreamed of working at Jack in the Box, but now her goal is to work in a daycare. She has a Jack Russell Terrier named Toro Loco, and she used to volunteer at the ACES program at VAPA. Fatima's main goal is to graduate high school and create the best possible environment for Juliet.
Thank you so much. Welcome. And then stay up there. Dr. Villarreal will be here. He's running late, so when he gets here, perhaps during the break, he can make a quick statement. But we do have an official statement that Rachel is going to read. So if we can have Gia come up. And this is Rancho Vista High School.
Hey, this is Gia Fadias. We are so proud to introduce Gia to our school board and community. She has a wonderful story to tell of travel, being in a military family, and now thinking big and setting her sights towards universities all the way up to Oregon and here in California. She competed amongst very strong candidates at RBV and earned this position as a student board representative. She is creative, she is analytical, she is kind, and she's very willing to lend her voice to her community. Allow me to introduce Gia Fadias, your student board rep from Rancho Buena Vista High School.
Thank you, Gia. Welcome. And so for our student board members, we know that you also have a full workload with school. So typically the board president, if you behave, will let you go at 8 o'clock. And don't feel like you have to stay any longer than that because we do know that you have homework. We appreciate you. And then for our regular board members, know that they'll be working on their report for their school. And we'll start hearing them toward the beginning of next year, starting sometime in March and April. Okay, welcome again one last time to our youth.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is number 6, public hearing. 6A, declaring sufficient textbooks or instructional materials for each student. We will now convene a public hearing on declaring sufficient textbooks or instructional materials for each pupil for the 2024-25 school year. Under Education Code Section 66011-9, the board must hold at least one public hearing to solicit comments from members of the public regarding the sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials. Chris, do we have any hold cards on this item?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Well, I guess that would be it. Thank you all for your comments. No, there are no comments. Seeing no comments and recommendation, I will now close this public hearing on declaring sufficient textbooks or instructional materials for each pupil for the 2024-25 school year. It is now closed. Next on the agenda is 7A. Presentation by community members, public comments, community members. Any member of the audience who wishes to hold and speak to an agenda item or at the appropriate time speak to an item not on the agenda should complete a hold card and present it to the board secretary before item 2A or before the meeting begins. In an effort to gain as much public input as possible, individual speakers will be limited to 3 minutes or less. A total of 20 minutes will be held for public comments under 7A. The remainder of public comments will be continued after completion of discussion and action items if necessary. We have 2 hold cards. 3 hold cards. First person is Rosemary Smithfield.
You're correct. Good evening, fellow trustees, Dr. Doyle, cabinet, and attendees. Tonight I had to pull a hold card. This is not the typical response for a board member when she would like to talk and have a discussion with her fellow trustees. I requested an item to be on the board. At this meeting, it was said it was going to be. And in case we forget, we may listen. Probably not going to be able to hear it. Yes, my sound doesn't work.
Everybody share. No, that you're getting into a topic that would have to be agendized.
I'm just asking for clarification, yes or no?
Students are in classrooms.
That's not what I asked.
They can't answer any more than that because we have to agendize the topic. And I'm happy to agendize the topic and talk about the status of Roosevelt
Really?
and of Madison.
Add it to the next agenda, please. I stand here tonight. It's not on the agenda. We did get a message that we would have a workshop to discuss this in October. There's still no workshop scheduled. We have families. Our stakeholders have families. They want to talk about this now. It needs to be done in October before a new board comes in because we created this. We need to fix it before we put it on somebody else's lap. Stakeholders are not happy. None of our stakeholders are happy. Okay? We owe it to them because that's who we work for. By not putting my items on the agenda month after month, you take away their voices. Not my voice. They come to me. They want me to talk to you. If I do say something, there's no discussion. That's not what we do. So with that in mind, we need to schedule that workshop tonight before the end of the meeting, because it is important for our community to know what we're doing with their schools, their money, and their students. The other thing is, I asked to talk about GLAD. I'm not going to get into this. But we're not being told the truth. The Friday letter was not truthful. Okay, we were told 2 years ago in the LCAP that we had to move it to Orange County. The reason we were given, not true. We're told we have to put it on pause because Orange County has to create it. San Diego County has it. We voted because our admin put in front of us, well, I didn't, but the majority did, to move it to Orange County, where we pay $2,500 per teacher that we train. If we kept it in San Diego County, our county, we would be paying $1,100 per teacher to train. How is that being fiscally responsible? Sorry, we need to discuss these things as a board.
Order. Stephanie Croker, you're next, please.
Is it possible to give just a little introduction about myself and where I am?
We'll start it off.
Also with a little bit about my school.
You can show your name,
Okay,
your school, and we're gonna start it.
okay, okay.
Good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sorry, it's a special ed teacher name, setting my own schedule. Again, timer, hi members of board. I am Stephanie Croker. I am an education specialist at Vista Adult Transition Center. We are often called VATSI. If you haven't been there, you should come. It's so fun. I love it there. So many good things are happening there. And it's amazing. We are a Title I school. Our whole school is all special education students. They're 18 to 22 years old. They all have IEPs, but have not yet earned their high school diploma. My students have mild to moderate disabilities. Often they could have been pushed into general education classes in high school. These are a lot of students who are very capable. They commonly have ADHD, learning disability, some autism. Those are typically the most common disabilities. But these students are getting diplomas, they're getting driver's licenses, they're getting jobs, some of them even in our own school district, which is so cool. They're moving out of their parents' homes. Some of them, they're very capable, they're smart, they're funny, they're sweet, they're amazing kids. And I'm so glad that I get to continue working with them instead of them just being done with high school and not getting that support to reach their potential. We have had tons of success. Last year, we had 10 students that earned their high school diploma from Maricosta or Vista Adult School. And it's amazing, but we are having a big problem right now. That's why I'm here at VATSI. We teach our students to advocate for themselves, to know their rights, and to know when they're being taken advantage of. And I believe that they're being taken advantage of right now by a loophole that's unintentional, a loophole that is in the contract right now. And the reason that this, what we're asking for is not in the contract right now is because it's a new need. Just like we had to add TK into contracts because it was a new need. Adult transition is not represented in the contract for caseload, especially for mild, moderate disabilities. So I filed a grievance 2 years in a row to try to get representation in the contract to protect our students from large caseloads class sizes. So we are self-contained classes, and that is where we fall in the contract. I am their teacher all day long. I plan every detail of their day, their jobs, everything, all the successes that I just mentioned. I am responsible for all of those details. And so you can imagine that 22 students would be you would not get good quality. In the contract, it says that mild, moderate, me, self-contained, me, should be capped at 16 students. And currently the protocol is that we are taking 22, which is the typical number for other ed specialists that are not self-contained. And that's a reasonable number. But for us, it doesn't apply. There is no place. Oh, no. There's no place in the contract that is being represented. So here to see if we can get everyone involved, do some research and get this taken care of so we can do what's right for our students.
Thank you, Ms. Parker.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is, if I say your name wrong, please correct me. I believe it's Krishna Berg.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Sorry.
Did I say your name correctly, ma'am?
Yes, Krishna Berg Litvanskas, but Berg is the shortened version. Good evening. Sorry, I interrupted you. Good evening, Dr. Boyle and the board. Appreciate your time for me to speak tonight. I work with Stephanie at BATSI. So I was the teacher that was with the students. So I'm kind of continuing on that conversation. I had the students, I had about 10 of them, which may not seem like a lot, but they are on the moderate side. So they do not need a lot of support, whether it's social, emotional, academic, work, all of it. You know, these are the last part of the adults and with IEPs that leave our district. So I feel that just being there has opened my eyes to so many resources for the community, for families and for special education in the whole, because I've seen all different levels. But I think putting them in a class of 20 to 22 students is not appropriate for them. I still get emails from them saying how much they miss their home safe place because it's just a lot for them. I mean, there's a lot going on in the world, but just in their little world, it's been very difficult for them. They're amazing students who need to reach their potential. And I know that's one of many values that we have in the district. And I think honoring them just as students and as adults is very important and essential for lifetime. We explained to them, you know, why I left, and they understand. But I think the district does need to understand that our teachers, we need to put things in a contract to honor what our students need. Because we are student-centered, and then right now to correct the contract language to include adult transition in the caseload max of 16 for mild mod in the self-contained classes. We're begging the board and administrators to get involved with the situation and allow our school to begin using the caseload max of 16 as it's intended to, and that to give the best that we can to our students, that they can be just great human beings out in the work world, college, whatever they want to do. So that's all much.
Thank you, Ms. Berg. Right. Next is 8A, reports from school-related organizations. We'll have up to 5 minutes. The first organization is Vista Teachers Association.
Hi, I'm Andrea Miller-Fay. I'm giving the report on behalf of Carrie Avila tonight. Unfortunately, Carrie couldn't be here, but we both felt it was good timing for me to speak since I'm the bargaining chair and we're about to enter bargaining. We look forward to returning to the bargaining table and improving contract language that demonstrates that this district values its educators. I will take this opportunity to remind the board that if students are the priority of the district, then educators need to be a priority. Teachers, counselors, librarians, SLPs, nurses, and school psychologists that feel supported and have their needs met are better able to meet the needs of their students. I also wanted to take the opportunity to share with you some of the biggest concerns of teachers throughout the district since it's the beginning of the year. Everyone's excited to be back, but we do have some concerns throughout our district. We continue to have uncovered leaves and vacancies in special education. In many instances, services and assessments are not happening even though the district is offering to pay special education staff to complete them. The reality is that special education staff throughout our district are simply too busy completing their own jobs to take on more work, even if it is fairly compensated. Similarly, we have many general education teachers, particularly in secondary, who are frustrated knowing that their students with disabilities are not receiving the support they deserve due to shortages of IAs. Additionally, open nurse positions create workload for our nurses that can't be completed and leads to health and safety issues for our students. At secondary schools, honors coordinators continue to wait on the necessary information that they need that can only be provided by the district in order to complete IB and AP exam registration. At Vista, Magnet, and Vita, the two middle schools with pools, PE teachers continue to be concerned with the safety conditions for their students. Some PE teachers have 49 middle school students, all with different swimming abilities that they're expected to monitor and keep safe while also delivering instruction. This situation is a tragedy waiting to happen. Madison teachers are frustrated with the overcrowding throughout their campus, and this is a familiar feeling at Rancho Buena Vista High School. While Madison's lack of space is due to an influx of students from the closure of Rancho Minerva, RBV's lack of space is due to the loss of 24 classrooms before the 23-24 school year that have never been replaced. Without adequate rooms and space for everyone, it makes it incredibly difficult for educators to complete their responsibilities. For instance, there's a lack of space and privacy to make parent phone calls, complete testing of SPED students, get on Zoom meetings, or even just to grade and assess students. Finally, elementary teachers have expressed frustration when the district does not listen to the guidance of the Elementary Curriculum Council. We look forward to working with you through the bargaining process to address these and other issues for our certificated staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is CSEA.
Good evening, Dr. Doyle, President Alvarado, board members, student board members. I'd also like to say welcome to the CSEA brothers, sisters, and siblings of the Vista Unified School District and chapter 389. As my name is Robert Johnson, and I'm here filling in for our chapter president, Marcela Ramos, who is attending the Orange County Department of Education 8th Annual Interpreters and Translators Conference, which brings me into the next section. The HR's community update this last week, highlighted 4 of our district interpreters and translators to commemorate the International Translations Day. This is the first time that we can remember that classified employees have been recognized individually, not lumped together with teachers and staff and management. It was just that. So we'd like to thank you for recognizing them. We'd also like to take the moment to recognize the Human Relations Classified efforts for providing the first of its series of classified employee relations forums. The first one was held this last Monday, focusing on bilingual stipends and hourly out-of-class pay for support staff who provide occasional bilingual assistance to our families and community members. Over 20 employees attended. We do believe that by HR conducting these forums on a regular basis, our members will be much more informed on how best they can serve our families and school communities. We look forward to seeing what topics are provided in the future. We would also like to take this opportunity to mention the water main break at Vista High School this last week. We would like to thank the grounds, maintenance, and operations departments who were there to assist the staff at Vista High School to make sure things continued to run smoothly, or as smoothly as possible. I'd also like to recognize that I saw Dr. Doyle and Dr. Loescher out there, like helping direct traffic and other things, getting things squared away. In the future, we would, Let me calm down. We are aware that Vista High School plans to debrief the situation with the entire staff. And we hope that classified employees are provided this opportunity to share what they experienced on what worked and what can be improved upon. When discussing how to implement these emergency rollout plans in the future, we hope we would address or have some of the site classified personnel such as the plant lead, because they know their sites the best. And lastly, I'd like to bring the attention to the fact that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So I dye my hair pink to show support and help bring attention to this because my wife is a 14-year survivor. So people here in the audience, listening at home, please get checked and encourage your loved ones, male and female, to get checked out if they notice something that causes them concern. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Next on the agenda, we have board member report outs. We'll start with trustee Kelly and we'll go around.
Yes, in the 3 weeks since our last meeting, none of the committees that I participate on have had meetings. I actually want to pass my time to the next trustee, trustee Morocco.
Yes, thank you. So, you know, the bond meeting, construction meeting, although I was out, I was zooming in and I was in the waiting room for 20 minutes and then the meeting was over. So that was a little interesting. But I also attended the DLAC meeting, my first DLAC meeting of the year, which was awesome. And student board members, do you know what the DLAC meeting is? Do you know what DLAC is? DLAC is our district English or Spanish speaking parents advisory committee. So from each school, there's a parent that speaks Spanish that presents a report to us. And, well, they present a report. They meet, they discuss things, and then the report is presented to us. So that's DLAC. So I'm the board liaison for that. So I went to the DLAC meeting, and I thank Robert for bringing up breast cancer awareness month. Yes, it's very important. I'm a 13-year survivor myself. Mammograms save lives, so please get your mammograms. And finally, go Padres! How proud of we are of our team? Anyway, thank you.
Trustee Vargas?
Yep, you all got that email from Corey Roosevelt, so last week I got to visit Roosevelt, the Wellness Center, so kudos to the board for, making sure that we have these services and the check-ins that are so critical with, our counselors, social workers and students. And so if you haven't gone, definitely recommend checking it out. Also stop by Bovier at the Beaumont site, and so beautiful things happening there, the principal has been phenomenal, keeping the momentum, the culture, and, keeping it going. Huge shout out to all the district staff that helped over the summer to transition all the furniture, textbooks and materials over to the new site. And, one complaint is about traffic, buses, but, we know that that's a temporary problem. Once the beautiful campus gets built up over, they'll have plenty of room for traffic control, parking, and parent engagement. I also visited Grapevine yesterday. So got to see, our dual language program, but also early education enrichment services. Once again, that school and, what's happening there with our student learners and their wellness murals. And so once again, funding that this board approved to help with mindful murals. And so with the, we'll take a look at that in the next fiscal year. Tomorrow, I will be visiting Betsy, so look forward to engaging and see what's happening there. And lastly, we attended the North County LGBTQ Gala supporting, our LGBTQ students, families through the center. And so congratulations on their gala. They have a new space off of Oceanside Boulevard. So I know that's going to have, tremendous impact in our region.
Trustee Smithfield?
I've met with a lot of groups of teachers and specialists, but no district committees that I'm recalling right now, but that could be my brain too.
Construction.
Well, I went to the one, actually, I missed the last one, yeah, the bond in Bovier's gone, and we have the dirt, and we're gonna go down and start to see progress. Well, actually, you can see a lot of progress, but it's getting rid of everything, so very exciting. Every time I drive by, I slow down, check it out. One of these days I'll pull in Chris and Alex and walk around, so. Yeah, and then the bond, yeah, finishing up.
If you guys think about anything that you can say it at the end. I got to attend the North County LGBTQ Center, and it was a wonderful event. It reminds me of how important the work is to support our LGBTQ students and staff members and create a safe, welcoming, affirming space for every individual that is part of this unified and beyond across North County. I went to Vista High and I was overcome with joy to see both the community schools parent center, which is so welcoming, and also the student wellness center where students have 2 counselors there. That's, you know, very important. I mean, some schools, and these are not guidance counselors, these are like mental health counselors and a teacher that is just for that center. So it was a wonderful place to see where students can get all their needs met if they just need a break. It was amazing. And I got to visit Grapevine Elementary. Again, I saw the community school parent new room or classroom, and it's another welcoming space. The principal took me around and talked to me about her glows and also areas of challenges as well. The mural was beautiful that the students created themselves with an art teacher. So seeing that public art is very inspiring. And I think it gives, you know, those students at Grapevine an enormous amount of pride. And that is all I was able to do this past month. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have staff committee reports to the board. And the first one is our annual update on equity board policy 0415. And for these reports, we're going to hear the presentations and then we'll go around with questions and then we'll go around with discussion. And student board members, if you all have questions, write them down and you'll have a chance to ask them as well, okay?
Good evening. Thank you so much for allowing us to talk about our equity board policy. It really is an honor to provide more information on what we've been doing as a district over the last several years. You've had extended reports over the last few years, so tonight's really going to be an overview of kind of reframing how we got to where we are with deciding on our board policy and how it was created. And then to show you some of the initiatives and guidelines and activities that we've had and how we're supporting those through the work. I'm so used to you doing it for me. Okay, thank you. Usually he's my Vanna over there. So we're starting with what our definition is. And as Dr. Joel's reminded us many times, Vista Unified was one of the first districts in California to develop a board policy on equity, which is really a very bold step for any district. And here we are being the first. It makes me think back to what our mission is, and that's to be excellence and innovation. And so we're really taking a lead in that work. So if I'm going to read it for you, it says the governing board believes that educational equity means that each child receives what they need to develop their full academic and social potential. So we started actually with our resolution, which was in June of 2020, and then the board policy was developed in 2021. And when we look back at our definition, it actually was framed and used, was what we used as the National Equity Project. We used the definition that they had for you to work and create the one that we have here in our district. So as we look at our board policy, one of the things that we do have is ways that we're going to work towards equity and what that involves. And so there's actually 3 key tenets that we have that outline our equity board policy. The first one is ensuring equally high outcomes for our students. Interrupting inequitable practices is our second one. And the third one is discovering and cultivating the unique gifts of our students as well. So as you know, in creating that policy that we have, these are the tenets that kind of frame the work that we're doing. And then from there, what we did and that what we use and that what you created are actually our 9 equity measures. Because it's okay to say that we're doing the work, but we need to make sure that we are doing the work. And this is how we're using this measure. So as you see, there are 9 up here. And as Dr. Foss gets into the presentation, she's going to show you some of the things that we're doing and how these 9 different components align to some of the work. So the first one we have, accessing student needs for decisions, allocating resources, enabling students to discover skills and success, building positive school climate with supports, adopting culturally relevant pedagogy to reflect diversity, collaborating with local agencies and community groups, promoting retention of diverse staff, providing professional development and learning, and also conducting program evaluations focused on equity. So as we go through these next few steps, we want you to kind of keep in mind those 9, because you're going to see how they reflect and touch back to what we've been doing as a district over the last few years. Dr. Faust?
And I believe it's on page 56, where you can reference the measures. So one example that we have had in place after the board policy was the Superintendent's Council for Equity and Anti-Racism. And the main goal of the council is to make recommendations to support the equity board policy. This fits with measures 1, 4, 8, and 9, the closest. We had a few years with fewer members, 20 members, and we focused more on building capacity. After that, for the following year, especially last year, we increased how many members, we invited more students. So it was 4 students invited, but we focused more on equity forums, for example, with student voice, and we started really analyzing data more. This year, we're at 44 members because we want to make sure that we have representation from all different grade levels. We're inviting 6 students, and we also want to look now at all the data. So now we're analyzing the equity forums, we're looking at the equity walks that we had last year, and putting it all together along with quantitative data to align, and we're also even modeling forums. So we'll have students where we can model what it looks like to ask them questions. Another example is professional learning, whether it's implicit bias or inequity. So this was part of the measures that most fit with 1, 3, 4, 8, and 9. First, we have general understanding. We had the Anti-Defamation League that worked with more than 90% of our staff to get trained in understanding implicit bias and anti-bias. We also do something for all teachers who are pursuing a micro-credential for TK. We have implicit bias training for them as well. So we've had about 50 teachers through this year complete that. In addition, every year we have some form of equity training for new teachers. So all new teachers through their Vista have some type of equitable practice training. Besides professional learning in that way, we also go into practices. So we have 2 methods of doing that. We have cohorts of grading for equity. So we have various teachers, 40 teachers that are completing that, where they review their practices and see if there's equitable grading processes. We also work with UCSD with Dr. Sharice Clark, with participants that are willing to analyze and reflect on their practices within class, and that is mostly in the high school. Another example of fitting the board policy is equity walks. With equity walks, they analyze and look at observations. We actually had one this morning in 3 different schools. We look at cultural identity, relationships, rigor, and relevance. These 4 indicators have shown that it helps bridge the opportunity gap. This matches measures 1, 2, 4, 8, and 9 the closest. You can notice the difference in the years. For the first year, we had 30 members that went to 3 different schools. And it was those 30, and we had a facilitator of Nicole Anderson. She ran all of them. Last year, we had 160 members, and we had a consistency of 96 going to 3 schools. So tripling how many people went. All the schools were involved, every single school. And we had a facilitator that came from the district. So this time it was a district facilitator. This year, we're changing it up again. So this year, again, all schools are involved in some form, but this time the facilitator is the principal. So we have a district lead to support, but the district's leading the work with the principal. Another way that we're aligning with your equity board policy that we're really proud of is restorative practices. This includes also alternate means to suspension. And this follows with Assembly Bills 1165 and 2598 as well. These closely match with your measures of 1 and 4. We had various opportunities during the years. Year 1, we started off with 2 practitioners from the National Conflict Resolution Center, starting off with trainings. They also modeled facilitated circles with students. And you can see how many students were in circles. There were 117, and there were 528 staff in them with 660 participants in trainings. The following year, we started off with 4 practitioners and worked towards 6. And there you can see the increase of students in circles to 1392, having 733 staff in circles with so many in training. We additionally had mentors in the secondary schools that have lived experience to support students also in the RJ work. And you can see how many students were in case management and about 1,000 student contacts. This year is our transitional year and adding more supports within the district. So we have 6 practitioners consistently supporting, and they are working to make sure they facilitate models of student groups. We have our TKF, who are also having parent workshops on how to implement RJ. We have an alternative to suspension program within the district as well that just started this week, where we are building that within house. We are training other people on restorative practices so we can have a trainer models to support our staff. And we also are working with UCLA with a grant called Project Reach, which really focuses on targeting how we can support students in live suspension.
Can I ask a question now?
We'll wait till the end, please. Thank you.
We have 2 more. We have multi-tiered systems of support, where we really focus on the whole child domain. You can see that the measures are 4, 5, 6, and 9. And this is about social emotional learning, behavioral supports, and academic support. So with this, it is all the different tiers from the very base level to the higher end needs. And there was a reduction of chronic absenteeism of 39%. We also see a reduction in suspensions of 23%. And you can see a decrease in D and F scores as a result as well, with 5.4 and 13.9. And finally, one thing we want to highlight is community schools. Community schools is really centered in equity, and they have 4 pillars. The 4 pillars are shown there: family and community engagement, integrated student supports, collaborative leadership, and extending the learning opportunities. They have certain values as well. So if they specifically mention relationships and being restorative, you can see that there's additional parent meetings across the district, and those are the minimum because of how many schools. There's also been an additional 12 parent centers in the different schools that have been community schools. Key conditions, you can see that it really embeds social emotional learning, for example, and systems of support to address barriers. There's been an additional 12 counselors, 4 liaison, and 13.6 teachers. Of course, the 0.6 is split between different hours. So those are some of our highlights. We're really proud to do this work. We've seen the data, and we're happy that this year we also have data from last year to now really focus on what we're going to do next.
All right, thank you. We'll start with Trustee Morocco and go around for question.
None right now. I'll pass. I might have some.
Trustee Vargas?
Yeah, for community schools, you said you have data, with, building it now, but as this is one-time funding and it's eventually gonna dry up, it'd be good to, monitor that and, see the progress and, obviously the districts or the schools that are, moving the needle, what is it that they're doing? Because there might be, 2 schools that are getting the same funding, but some may be doing something different. And so capturing and obviously, going back for like a round 3 of funding at the state level.
Okay.
But no specific data points at this time.
Do you want comment to that, or are we just going through questions?
I mean, if you comment on some of the data points you've seen there, like, things
So
that you're seeing.
what I was going to respond to was how we're making sure the schools are seeing what others are doing is every other Wednesday, we have a meeting with each community school site lead. It's led by Dr. Faust and Kiki Bispo. And so that's where they're coming together and sharing in some of those really rich ideas and those things that are happening at the other schools. Because what we don't want is for it to live in silos, where then at the end of the year, we find out that somebody might have had something that was different than another. So we're finding that through the leadership and getting this team together is that it really is beginning to reflect, would you say? And some of the things that we're beginning, they're trying new things because they're a year into this. Some of them are 2 years into it now. And so we're just seeing more courage and kind of dipping their toe into something that's outside the box. Thank you.
Trustee Smithfield?
I'm gonna go back to the restorative practice. Everybody probably knows I have major issues with the money we spend. after you doing it for well over 10 years in this district. And you're just telling me that we're just now, after 10 years plus, training people to be trainer or trainers?
We do want to make sure that we have it set up for next year. So what we're doing is the people that are actually running the alternative ed to suspension, they're actually being trained, and then we have district that are also being trained.
Okay, but my question is, for 10 years, we haven't trained anybody in this district to be a trainer or trainer and restorative practice with all the money we spent on this program?
I'm not sure that they've gone through the extensive training that the team this year is going through. What we want to do is make sure that we have a team that then can begin to have that level that we know we need, because we are seeing success with what's been happening over the last few years.
Yeah, and I think our teachers are more than able to do it without spending another $1 million.
Trustee Kelly?
Looking ahead, I was wondering, you know, what are the challenges and the most important priorities that you see for the next 2 to 3 years?
We want to make sure that we're really looking at all the data from a triangular lens. So we want to make sure that we look at our quantitative data. We want the student voice and increasing the student voice and parent voice. And then analyzing observations, for example, and what we see in equity walks, and then seeing the trends to make sure that we're targeting the specific needs. So it is like looking at historical data and consistent data that you see in all the 3 different areas that really show the big picture of our next steps. So that is the challenge for this year that we want to address, and especially in the Equity Council.
Thanks. Dr. McKeon, did you have anything to add?
So what I was going to add to that is looking at when we're doing our equity walks and making sure that the outcomes of that become actions. Because it's one thing to say that this is what's needed, but how are we making sure that when we hear that schools need to be more Spanish language rich in those rooms, how are we ensuring that those types of things are happening? So I think that's one of the things that we're continuing to do is, as those, like the schools that went through it today, how are we now working with them to make sure that feedback is something that's being implemented? I also think too about the Equity Council. One of the goals that we have is to really have some student forums where those students come and that the adults are listening and the students are the ones presenting about what it feels like to be a high school student in the diverse environments that we have, because the adults need to learn from them as much as they need to learn from us. Thank you.
Student board members, are there any questions about the presentation? None? We'll go
Do you
to,
have any questions?
well, I did have a question about the CSAC committees, the Community School Advisory Councils. With, are there any of our schools that are having difficulty in getting the parent involvement? And if so, is there a way for us to support them, or maybe look at other models that have a robust parent participation in their CSAC committees, which is the Community School Advisory Council?
With the councils that they have, the administrator is heavily involved. So what they're doing many times is integrating it into their school site council as an agenda item, and then within there, parents are invited even more. So that's been an innovative way of making sure that there's always several parents that are there for student, for school site council, but then adding more parents during that time. But yes, we're looking at additional ways with our liaisons and making sure that we always consider Spanish, for example, if someone speaks Spanish, that they have always all the materials in their language and they can speak that language. We additionally have our coalition meetings where we try to promote more community partnerships. And there we try to build more community members to come to the CSAC meetings as well.
Great, thank you. So feedback and next steps, starting with Trustee Morocco.
I'm just wondering if there's, actually, it's maybe more of a question, but, I see a lot of this including, like cultural identity and race and things like that. But equity, in my opinion or my understanding, transcends that as well into any sort of
deficit that our children have, like special ed, you know, things like that. Are we addressing this, any of this, addressing that? What are we doing to address that?
Yeah, what reminds me of that specific concern is not only in all of our data, but for example, in Project Reach, we've analyzed data and we're targeting students that actually have IEPs and analyzing their suspension rates and not just their rates, but also the days that are outside of the classroom to make sure that when we compare, it is considered that there's other needs as well. So that's an example of where we're specifically targeting students with IEPs, but also in the Equity Council, we talk about it. In the Equity Walks, we talk about the diversity there as well.
In the Equity Walks, we do visit all classrooms.
Okay.
So the participants are seeing all the different layers that are out of school. So that way, when that information comes back together and we're providing those recommendations to that school, sometimes the SPED voice is coming up a little differently in some of those. And, you know, what's really neat is how receptive the principal of that school is on getting that information. It's really been created where it's such a giving environment that it's not as though their wall is up. They really want to hear it because they really are wanting to make their school the best it can be for everyone.
I will add, in community schools, in their report, they picked several groups that they want to target to increase the voice. And one of the groups that every school picked was the families and students who has IEPs.
And what about when there's families that have, like, their student trend falls into more than one category, so.
Like their intersectionality.
Right.
Yeah, that we would also mention in other areas as well. For example, they also look at students that qualify as McKinney-Vento, for example. Many of them chose students there, and then almost all of them, I think everyone chose also families of multilingual learners.
Trustee Vargas,
No further comments, thank you.
trustee Smithfield.
You've done an awesome job. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Trustee Kelly.
I think, let's make sure as the next budget and blueprint are formed that some of those suggestions you made about making sure our observations become actionable in terms of books and libraries. You know, the things that they're accounted for at the right point in our cycle.
Thank you.
And feedback, I'm really happy about the attendance rate, and I think that it's correlated with the intentional steps that the district is taking towards creating equitable spaces that are culturally responsive to the communities that we serve, all communities. And so I would say, you know, keep up the good work, but also maybe look at our school sites that aren't having as much success with some of these measures. And perhaps they can learn from other school sites that maybe might be exceptional in an item or two. So we can share that well, which you are with those. Well, you guys shared about community schools, but beyond community schools, having, like, for example, grading for equity. Are all the high schools doing that? Have all the high schools, because I went over to Vista High and I was speaking to some of the teachers there, and they're meeting students where they are. They're giving them opportunities to redo assignments. They're helping them with edits and making sure that kids learn the content. And I don't know, is that happening at all of our high schools?
We are in the midst of recruiting more teachers to be
Okay.
part of the cohort.
But yeah, that was amazing to see the kids and the teachers, you know, collaborating in that way, and that's helping with content, helping with grades, and just having them definitely share best practices would be a good idea. Yeah, I think, student board members, feedback on the presentation?
Thank
Okay.
you. We'd love to
All right.
invite you guys to participate when we have student forums.
Yeah.
We would like to extend that to you because we'd love to hear what you have to say in one of those smaller environments where we can get your voice. We'll make sure you guys know about it, okay? Thank
We
you.
have so much planned for you. You have.
So,
We'll leave this up here, Dr. Bell.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We appreciate your time and effort So we are gonna take a break so we can, number one, release our students who are observing the meeting. And then number two, we have Dr. Villarreal who came so that he'll be able to share a little bit about his student board member during our recess. So recess for 10 minutes.
You can say, wherever you come back. Before you-
Okay. All right, we'll give you 10 minutes.
Okay, President Alvarado, we're back.
Yes, and during our break, a community member asked for us to speak up a little bit louder. So everyone can hear seated in the back. So that was a request.
Before you reconvene, we were gonna have Dr. B
Yes, sir.
make a quick statement before the board meeting starts again.
Yeah, come on up, Dr. Villarreal.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I apologize for being late. President Alvarado, Dr. Doyle, trustees, I just want to thank, now Gia's gone. Just. Oh, there you are. Yes, sorry. I had to just take a moment and thank you for allowing this process to happen. It is so powerful to get to know the students during the orientation Dr. Doyle led us through. And hearing her story, and I did give them a little bit of razzing earlier, saying they were talking about grading and you didn't say anything. But they said, wait till next month, so be ready for that, by the way. But Gia is incredible. She's a Vista student through and through, Temple Heights, Casita, Vita, right? And then RBV. And so I know that they shared something earlier about my thoughts with her, but I'm just so excited that they have this opportunity. She competed against, I think, 20 plus students. And the quote from the committee to me was, she was our #1 for this position. And so I just wanted to publicly thank her, and I'm excited for her. She's already eaten half the candy. Just have them hang in there during these months that are ahead. So congratulations to Gia. Thank you.
Quick picture of the two.
Yes.
Excellent. Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is 10B, the Better Together Annual Survey by Dr. Alan Daly for the years 2023-2024.
Right, Dr. Daly, just check to make sure your clicker's working. They should work well.
Apparently does the.
Yep, we're good.
This is the laser. Okay.
The laser doesn't work on the TDA.
So good evening. I have to apologize right at the outset that typically I do everything I can to avoid stereotypes. And unfortunately, I passed myself in the mirror in the bathroom and I realized I'm wearing patches on my jacket and a scarf and I'm a professor. So it's sort of like hit every stereotype in the book around that. So I ask for your forgiveness as board members and student board members to never dress like this if you become a professor. So it's a great pleasure to be here this evening. I've got quite a lot of material to cover, which I'm going to do in a relatively lickety-split sort of way. We've got a lot of data to share. I'm going to go relatively slowly in the beginning, just because I'll use some of the graphs as like teaching examples, and then I'll go more rapidly throughout it. And at the end, of course, questions, et cetera, are welcome. So I'll go ahead and get started. Just going to remind us about the purpose of what we were doing here, overview of the data collection, a little bit of some of the results and the next steps. So the first thing is that we took direction from the district staff. And the idea is that in the fall of 2021, you all had this strategic plan that you engaged and you came up with this amazing vision statement and mission statement and set of values. And we were directed to measure those things, and we set about to do that. We also included things that were directly tied to your learner portraits to be able to give you some feedback on where you are at the learner portraits. The idea behind this is that you can actually use it for some action. You can pull out some of the items and use it for action. So as a reminder, we started in the spring of 2023. We created awareness. I had the privilege of meeting with a number of you, some of you whom long-standing relationships with, and that's always really valuable. And I appreciated all the time that you took. In the fall of 2023, we co-created the instruments with district staff, basing it on what the strategic plan was telling us. And we fed all the data back, all the information, surveys we developed back to district staff so they could review and say, yep, this is what we want to do. In the winter, we kicked off multiple stakeholder surveys. So the stakeholders included students and parents and classified staff and teachers and leaders, et cetera. And in the spring, the data started flowing in, and then in the summer and early into the fall, we started the analysis, and now we're doing the sharing back process here. I'm not sure if this is, thanks. So I want to say one thing on timelines. So some concerns perhaps that we were supposed to report this data back to you in August, have everything already in August. And I just want to alert you that we were set to close all data collection in February of 2024. So at the end of February 2024, all the data should have been in, and we should have been doing our analysis, and then we would have been on target. Unfortunately, during that time, there was really poor response rates. They're really quite low. And so in collaboration with district staff, we said, well, we can delay a little and sort of push the window out longer to gather more data. And we decided to do that. What that did is ultimately on June 11th, we actually ended up closing everything. So as you can see, we had to delay quite a while just in the data collection process itself, about 4 months. And so we hustled over the summer to try to make up that delay. And so we're only about a month late in getting you the stuff. Still late nonetheless, but I want to give you some background on why that was the case. For data collection, I won't spend much time on this slide because you're going to hear me talk about this as I go through it. We collected a variety of different kinds of data. You should be able to draw straight lines from what's behind you on the wall to the kinds of stuff that we were collecting. That was the direction we had taken from district staff. We collect data from students at the 3rd grade, the 6th grade, and the 9th grade. The idea behind that is to follow them longitudinally. In addition, we're also collecting data from those same parents at 3rd, 6th, and 9, so we can follow them longitudinally. Okay, this is moving very quickly. So not, I don't know why it suddenly.
You want me to fix it?
Yeah.
And what slide do you want to go?
It should be on slide
8.
11.
11?
Oh, no, excuse me. We can go to, yeah, let's do response rates. Great, thank you. So on response rates here, you can see this response rates we got. They were actually quite good once we sort of extended out that window. And for leaders, we're at 81%. Teachers, we had 74%, almost 75% of the teachers, which is somewhere around 850 teachers or something. 41% of the classified staff. It's a little bit less than we've had in other years. It's still higher than neighboring districts that we've collected from. Students, we had 62% of the students, and parents, unfortunately, this year we only had 12%. I know your community liaisons worked really hard at trying to get the data from the parents. That's a little bit lower than we've had in the past. So I want to thank you first, just for the time and the effort, and the folks that maybe some of whom are in the audience that took the time to respond to the surveys to get those response rates up. So I'm going to start with the leader data. I'm going to go relatively slowly here to just try to explain what you're looking at, and then you'll be looking at the same thing over and over and over until we get to the student voice and choice and instructional voice and choice. So those are the areas that we collected from the leaders. You'll almost see exactly the same areas we collected from the teachers and from the students. Again, they align directly with the current new strategic plan. So when, I don't know why, it's like, I told you I was going to speed talk. So thanks, I'm all done. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That's really great.
Turn that off and turn it back on. Yes. I'll try it again. You'll see it.
Great. Okay, so the way this will work is I'll take a little bit longer on the leader. Now I have to start all over. So I hate stereotypes and I look back. So I'm including here just a few of the sample items, just to give you a little bit of a flavor of what we were measuring. Matt, maybe you just,
Tempting to do it.
So a couple of the trust items here. Go ahead. Okay, let's start here and do a little bit of math together. So I'm just gonna, is it okay to move away from this?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, great. I don't know if the owl can still see me. I'm not that great to look at, so it's probably perfectly fine. But if we take a look at this, we're gonna use this as a teaching example. So the scale that we use to measure people's responses here are from 1 to 6. Now you may be thinking to yourself, why a 1 to 6 scale? Which is a good question, because typically you're used to seeing probably 1 to 5 scales. 1 to 5 scales include like a neutral point. Somebody feels neutral. We're not clear anybody actually ever feels completely neutral about anything. So if you ask 6 points, it's a forced choice in the middle. So the choices are 1 would be strongly disagree, 2 would be disagree, 3 would be slightly disagree, 4 would be slightly agree, 5 agree, 6 strongly agree, okay? That's an important thing to keep in mind because I'll tell you a little bit about a rule of thumb that we'll use when we're looking at this data. Now, for those of you that are really paying attention, you see that that's not really a 6-point scale. There's a 0 there. That 0 has to do with the standard deviation, which I'll explain in a minute. So the rule of thumb that we use when we're looking at this is we look at what we call a 4 and rising. So we ask ourselves the question, do we have at least slightly agree and rising? And the reason that's important is because almost all the items on here are affirmatively worded, they're positively worded, they're pro-social behaviors. So you want more of those. So bigger number, better. So what we say to districts is we say, what we want you to be shooting for is a 4 and rising. So things above a 4, right? Now, I want to be super clear. It doesn't mean that if you're at a 4, it's puppies and rainbows. There's all work to be done still. But that's where we say, if you're in this space, we want you to continue doing that. It represents good movement, good growth, right? Because we've got at least people slightly agreeing to the statements. So you can see here, we're 4 and rising on collegial trust and sense of belonging. Now, let me draw your attention to the white bars below. Those are the standard deviations. Again, I'm taking a little bit longer on this one, just so we're all clear about what this means. Standard deviations, you can sort of think about them as a measure of divergence or convergence, meaning that you can end up with a mean score of a 3 with a whole bunch of people saying 1 and a whole bunch of people saying 6, right? That's a very different profile than a whole bunch of people saying a 3, right? 1 represents sort of this bifurcated 2 parts of the system. The other one represents this kind of really focused around one particular score. The rule of thumb here is we want to look for standard deviations below 1, right? So we think that what that shows is that shows relative convergence around particular perceptions in the scores. So this tells you that a lot of folks that are responding to this particular set of items is responding around a 4 or a 5-ish, and there's also, of course, some people a little bit lower, but they're responding in that general area. We don't have a big bifurcation, like with a bunch of people really scoring very low or scoring very high. So the 2 rules of thumb we'll use is 4 and rising, so that's what we want to look for, and we want to look for standard deviations below a 1. That'll give you some idea of what you're looking at. One other point on this is that the words on the side, like collegial trust, sense of belonging, those are called constructs. So they're like big ideas. And those big ideas are all measured by individual items. So we want you to focus on like the big idea because each individual item, while important, is not as strong as the overall construct. Okay? Yeah.
In the past, we didn't use collegial, we used specific, so we could measure how did the teachers feel at the site, about the site.
Yeah.
How do they feel about the district? How do our principals feel about the site and the district?
Yeah.
It wasn't collegial. Collegial, when they filled this out in the dictionary, it says your peer,
Yeah.
your worker, not the people you work for.
Yeah.
So this, all of this is telling me the teachers, I know this because they all came to me.
Yeah.
The teachers filled it out with, yes, I feel trust by my colleagues.
Yeah.
But we didn't ask them how, if they feel trust from everybody else.
It's so some of the collegial trust questions, you're absolutely right. It's like peer to peer, right? And in the survey, we again took direction from district staff. One of the big complaints we got about the instrument was it was too long. So this is one of the areas that we took direction on reducing.
But
So
it
you're right.
changes the whole meaning of the information that a school board needs.
It adds a different kind of information, right?
And
It tells us
there's a lot-
something, it tells us something about the relationships between like teacher to teacher, leader teacher. It doesn't say anything about a teacher's perception as to whether they have trust in their site principal or a principal's trust in the district.
And do they feel that the district is trustworthy?
Yeah,
They
that
feel
is true.
they're being treated kindly every day
Yeah.
by the district, but none of that's here.
That
We
is true.
have zero information in this whole entire thing.
Yeah, I think what this tells you though, is this tells you that your leaders, and I realize we're gonna do the discussion at the end, so that was my mistake.
Pardon me. We're gonna hold our questions till the end, and then we're gonna go round about like we did, what we've been doing for every presentation. By the staff.
Yeah, that was my mistake. Rosemary and I go way back, so. It does tell us that the relationships between the leaders themselves, and remember, we say leaders, we're talking about principals and district office folks. There's a high level of collegial trust between them. That's what that measures. And when we look at the teacher data, which you'll see in a little bit, it says, okay, it does not say there's a high level of trust between the teacher and the principal. That's not what this was measuring. This was measuring, do the teachers feel like they have trusting relationships between and amongst themselves? Do the leaders feel they have trusting relationships between and amongst themselves? So true, not measuring what you identified, measuring something else, but still a data point. Now, it may not be the data point that folks find useful or.
We were getting.
We took direction from district staff.
I never you told me to get it.
Yeah. So the next one is sense of belonging. And again, just using our, yeah, thank you. Sense of belonging, just using our kind of rule of thumb here. We're at a 4 and rising, almost at a 5. And the standard deviation again below a 1. So I guess one of the things I want to say to you in an affirmative way is that part of the reason that exists is because you as board members set the tone for that to exist. Next slide, please. So what we include here is a level of item levels. And so it shows the mean score on each of the individual items. It also shows the standard deviation. You'll notice the standard deviations are higher here because at individual levels, there's higher variation. Again, we don't want you overthinking about each individual item. Stay focused at the larger level. Next one, please. So we did measure collegial trust in the past, and we measured it again this year. You'll notice a big reduction from 2020 when we had higher collegial trust reports. You'll notice over the last 2 years, remember we skipped a year, you'll notice over the last couple measurement points, it's about the same. That's true in general for most of the constructs when we look at them. There's not an enormous amount of change from last measurement to this measurement. So we did measure collegial trust in the past. You could see it remains relatively constant. Next slide, please. So now I'll go a little bit faster, although in this area, we're measuring something we never measured before for your district because of your new values that you have up here around kindness. Next slide, please, Mike. So as you look at this, we are asking around flourishing, gratitude, social responsibility, personal values and social responsibility, personal beliefs. And you'll see here that one of the big takeaways, and this really doesn't get measured very much in districts at all that I know about. So this is another period of innovation. This is all brand new. We've never measured this stuff before. We measured it because of this idea around kindness that you all have surfaced as being really important for you. And you can see really relatively high scores in this area, actually really strong scores. And you'll notice small standard deviations. Next slide, please. Yeah, good. So let's talk about collaboration. You can see some of the items. Next one, please. And so you see here, this is around collaboration. We've got a 4 and rising 4.56. You see a less than 1 standard deviation. So again, more convergence around this. One of the real strengths that comes out across all staff meeting leaders, teachers classified is the data around parent and community involvement. This real care and orientation towards the community, which is really important. You notice is quite high score and the standard deviations are actually quite low. Next slide, please. You can see some of the individual items here in terms of how people responded. Again, quite high and low standard deviations. Next slide, please. We collected collaboration in the past, so this is another one that we measure the same over time. We also collected parent and community involvement over time. You'll notice that the scores have stayed relatively similar. Between the sort of blue bars and gold bars, that difference is not a statistically significant one. So although the numbers are different, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a really different. Next slide, please. And finally, next slide, Matt. We're going to talk about leaders' perspective on student agency. This is kind of a weird graph. But basically, the way to think about this is we're trying to assess, are leaders, their sort of mindsets, are they more teacher-centric or student-centric in terms of their approaches to instruction? And the blue bars here on the right-hand side represent more student-centric approaches. On the left-hand side, it represents more teacher-centric approaches. And your learner portraits are far more student-centric. So what this tells you is that the leaders have the mindset and the orientation towards student agency. Next slide, please. Okay, let's go into the teachers, and I'll go a little more rapidly here because I've used the leaders as a teaching example. So again, just the item, and Matt, every time we hit one of these, you can just go to the next one. Next one. Now we're looking at the teacher reports. We're talking about, I don't know, 850 teachers in the district. And we asked them about collegial trust. Again, as Rosemary thoughtfully pointed out, this represents the relationship between teachers, which is really strong. It's one of the things you'll see in this district is that the teaching staff is just really incredible. We also asked them about instructional leadership. You're going to notice here a higher standard deviation. What that means, and that goes above the one that we talk about, what that means is just way more sort of perspectives on how people responded to instructional leadership. That's not surprising. You've got a large number of schools. People are putting input on a large number of schools. Sense of belonging for your teachers also quite high and low standard deviation. Next slide. And so here are the particular items so that you get a sense of what we're measuring. This isn't all of them, just some sample ones. Next slide, please. And we measured collegial trust and instructional leadership over time. That was another one that we followed from year to year to year. And collegial trust stays really consistent with our teaching staff. They really feel valued by their peer relationships. You'll notice that instructional leadership stays about the same. It's a little bit lower than what it was in the original measurement in 2020, but again, it stays pretty consistent. And we've got high variability in that because people have different experiences depending on what school they're at.
Same questions used as the other years?
Everything that has like a comparable bar here, I'm sorry, President. Everything that has a comparable bar here is same questions over time. Exactly the same. Whenever you see those three together, same questions over time. Next, please. Okay, go ahead, Matt. So same thing here. I think one of the things that really impresses me about the teaching force here is that they're incredibly resilient. They express high levels of gratitude. They are working to flourish both personally and in their communities. They take their work and their personal values very seriously. They have strong beliefs around being oriented to others. And all you have to do is spend some time in this district with the teaching staff to know that that's absolutely the case. And you could just see these are some of the highest scores that we see across any of the domains that are being measured. So as a board, what I want you to take away from this, and it's not surprising, but it's nice to have it documented. You've got a bunch of folks here that are really resilient, they're flourishing, they're appreciative of the kinds of work that you do. Again, it doesn't mean everything is perfect. There's still work to do, but this signals to you about the strength of that group of folks which is close to 900 people. So we're talking about a lot of people. Next slide, please. And these are some of the items that, I know some got cut off here, but these are some of the items that would measure that. Next slide, please, Matt. Okay, keep going. Collaboration is something we measured previously in previous years. So the next slide, you'll see the comparison. We measured around peer collaboration, meaning do like teachers have the time and the resources to be able to work together? We know our teachers in this district learn really well from one another. You could see the scores here. You can also see the low standard deviations. Next slide, please. You'll also take a look at some of these scores. Something's going on with the slides, it's cutting off those items, but you have them in your handout. But again, quite good. We look at this over time. And again, these are ones, Rosemary and Mary, we measured over time. So peer collaboration, they're just about the same over time. There's not that much difference as we look at them. Do you remember the thing about the parent and community involvement? The teaching staff, the leader staff is really outside oriented, which I think is really powerful, right? It speaks of the power of the community of the folks that work in this district. Thanks, Matt. Keep going. Now we're gonna look at something that's a little different now. So everything I said before, remember it, but ignore it. So now we're looking at something a little bit different. We're looking at student voice and choice here. And so we're taking a look at, we're asking teachers, and it's a shame these have gotten cut off, but we're asking teachers, like, is in your current classroom, I'll look on my slide so I can tell you exactly what that says. In your current classroom, is there time set up for collaboration? Hold on a second, I'm just pulling this up.
Would you like me to read it?
It's on the bottom of the slide too. It's on it says.
No, the items are on the side for some reason.
Helpful student
Thank you.
interaction and collaboration is the
Thank
first
you.
one.
Great. So the way to look at this is that this is a little bit different of a scale. So we ask teachers to assess in your classroom, to what degree is that helpful interaction and collaboration taking place currently? That's a blue bar. And then the white bar says in your ideal collaboration, in your ideal setting, to what degree is interaction and collaboration taking place? So what this gives you is like a gap analysis between what teachers are saying is going on in their classroom and what they ideally would like to see in their classroom. What's cool about this is that it signals that you've got a bunch of folks that are really eager to move towards these ideas like connecting to student competencies, having more student-led instructional activities. And it provides an opportunity for you all to engage in more connection and examination and perhaps some PD around what that might look like. And you'll see that same gap for we look at the students, et cetera. Next slide, please. Okay, here again, we have the same problem. So these are items. Oh, it's probably in Google Slides. That's right. You have these, so you can read them. I hope
pull up the PDF.
Do you all have it too? Okay.
I can
great.
pull up the PDF.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Let me try it because it'll only take me a moment.
Well, luckily for you, I can entertain you with an interpretive dance while we wait.
Did we put it in PDF, Chris?
Should be in there.
Yeah, I got it. Give me a second. It'll take me a minute to get to that.
You're looking for slide
Yeah.
41 or 42.
Yeah. Almost there, guys.
Rosemary, this is another one we measured over time too. The second one.
Almost there. Okay, here we go.
Oh yeah, you have a black and white, so you can't tell about the overtime.
About the overtime.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, great. These are just the different items that we're measuring the interaction, et cetera. Next slide, or whatever you call the PDF thing. Good, thank you. Now, because we measured this previously, we looked at over time, and you can see that it's, again, that's the overall takeaway message. It stayed relatively consistent. Now, to be fair, you all have evolved in their ways of thinking about the learner portraits, and you've evolved in your own thinking. So, this may require some revisiting as you continue moving forward in the learner portraits. Next slide. This is another set of items that we asked. This is around the equity, and the folks that did the equity presentation did a really nice job on this, so I won't belabor this. But you can see the scores are 4 and rising for the most part. The equity language was a little bit lower, but after listening to the presentation tonight, I realized it's probably because your language has been evolving in the district and how you think and talk about equity. Next slide, please. So we measured this. This is again another example of an over time measurement. So we measured all these different areas over time. You'll notice again a change in the scores, statistically significant change in the scores around equity language and equity LGBTQIA. And that's because your language has been evolving in that place. There's also a weird paradox that happens in the equity scores, or we see it in other districts. Is that folks become more aware of the way that they talk about equity, like Ray, I think you were talking about special education as a way to think about equity. As people become more aware about equity, they often are more critical about the way that they think about it, and therefore they rate themselves lower. So it's this interesting paradox we see. So let's talk about students. Thank you. Hopefully this is of interest. Next one, please. I'm mindful of my time, Martha. Thank you. We measured student around trust, culture and climate, belonging and safety. We measured these at 3rd grade, 6th grade, 9th grade. And you could see really, again, 4 and rising. The safety one was a little bit low. The safety one refers to like physical senses of safety, not psychological senses of safety. So might be something to pay a little bit attention to here. You could see the individual items and the range of scores here. Next one, please. We also measured this over time. So this is another one that we compared over time. So you see culture and climate stays relatively consistent, belonging relatively consistent. Again, a little bit of a drop in safety. So this may be an area to tune into a little bit more. And when we look at this one, it's like the same slide twice. So again, you can see these scores don't change very much over time. Keep going now. Thank you. So on this one is the first time we've measured flourishing, gratitude, et cetera, from the students. And you can see our students in this district also report out really high levels of being gratitude, having high levels of gratitude, appreciating what's happening in their school and having some voice around that. Next slide, please. So there's some of the individual items. Again, you have some more variation. Next slide, please. Great. So we also wanted to take a look at this broken out by grade levels. So the way to interpret this is that the folks that are in 3rd grade are the white bars. The folks that are in the green are in the 6th. The folks that are in the blue are in the 9th. So you can see a difference. It's a pretty typical pattern. Generally, elementary students report a little higher than middle than high school. Next slide, please. Great, thanks. Again, do you recall that when we talked about the teacher, we did the gap analysis around voice and choice? We asked students about voice and choice, like to what degree do you have voice and choice in the work that you're doing in your schoolwork? And you can see here, I think if you'll recall, the students are indicating that for the most part in their current classroom, they see the teacher's guide on the side, meaning it isn't heavily teacher-centric. And ideally, that's not that much higher. So you're getting really close in that regard. The thing I want to point out, because we also noticed it in the teacher data, is that having more student agency and learning strategies and instructional goals was an area that showed up both in the teacher data and in the student data. So in other words, like, how can students have even more involvement in their own instructional strategies and their instructional goals? We're almost done here. These are just individual items. Next one, please. And we also, this is another one we measured over time. So this is the same one over time. And you could see like the pattern is generally the same over time. We don't see a lot of shift over time. Next one, please. These are again indicative of over time measures. We actually see quite a big jump from 2020 into the last 2 time points. So, and I think that coincides with the learner portraits and focusing
Well,
more.
it also coincides with 2020 was right in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, there was that COVID thing. I don't know if you remember it.
We decided to do it anyways because we wanted the baseline, but these kids, a lot of the kids were not even in school.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's good. Okay, let's look at the parents real quick. I just want to remind you of the parents, we only had a 12% response rate, right? Like, so, yeah, it's not a very strong response rates. Feel much more confident about all the other stakeholder groups, our students, our leaders, our teachers. You could see the scores here for yourself. We still hit the 4 and rising with the teacher or the parents that did respond. That teacher trust indicates that the parents have high levels of trust in their students, in their kids' teachers. You can see the individual item level here. Next slide, please, Matt. And then this is one of these ones that we measured over time also. We asked parents about educational programming. You'll see the change from 2020, obviously. We asked parents over time around culture and climate and teacher trust. It stays relatively the same, but again, you only had 12% of the parents, so. The really interesting thing is we measured like gratitude, flourishing and all of that with the teachers and the leaders and the kids. We also asked the parents because we wanted to get some assessment of the community. And there is a lot of resilience in the community as well. You all know that. You serve your communities. You know there's a lot of resilience there. And thank that. Next slide. Those are the individual items that you can draw from. I know this seems like the never-ending story. We also asked the parents about student voice and choice, and this represents that gap analysis. I just want to draw your attention to instructional goals and learning strategies. So for teachers, for parents, and for kids, that would be an area that you want to lean into more. I already know your learner portraits do that kind of work, so it's a matter of really leaning into that. I just want to say, we really value the classified folks. I was really appreciative with Robert and his kind words this evening. I'm showing these a little bit differently because we really hustled to get you all this report. Next slide. But our classified staff are really important to us, obviously. Hard to read that, but these are all really they're all foreign on this side. It looks a little bit different, but these scores, yeah, thanks, Matt. These scores are all quite good. So we had probably about 41% of the classified staff responding, but again, quite good. Next slide, please. Same thing here, the parent and community involvement and the peer collaboration. Thanks, Matt. Next slide. And yeah, that's it. I know that took a long time and it went really fast, so I'm happy to entertain questions.
We'll start with trustee Vargas.
No question, Mike. Thank you very much.
Trustee Smithfield.
I do. So I'm gonna ask you, okay, so we've already established that, these questions are all written about colleagues, so you're talking about your peers.
For the trust ones, yes.
As opposed to getting information about how parents feel about the district, how parents feel, what kind of job, how students feel about the district, how teachers feel about, we can even ask the teachers how they feel, or the other admin. So we've already established that. So with that.
With one minor exception, we asked parents about educational programming. So that is about like, how's the district doing in terms of educational programming? So we did ask that, not the other areas you were talking about, but for that one, we did ask.
Okay. That was the whole thing. So, okay, so if we go to, so I have notes. I actually sat with a very well-versed person in this.
Oh, good.
They gave me some awesome questions and thoughts.
Good.
So on slide 10. Reflect on the results, consider the following questions. Where are the strengths? What do you wonder about? Where are opportunities for growth? What are your specific focuses? So we shifted it to colleagues. So what are our strengths with our colleagues? Everything is that way. Let me go. So then I think next the 15, actually they said the slides 10 to the end were all kind of very iffy with how we got our information and what we're using the information for, which really was never the intent of this from the beginning. So focus completely on slide 20. I know you said really good things about slide 20, but I was actually given something else because what they're saying is how does our district make me feel? Is what we were asking them. We're really not about feeling. We should be about our kids learning. Are we getting our kids? Like, I get that we're saying, how do we feel? Is it important? Is it important to me to make sure that all people are treated fairly?
Yeah,
Of course it is. How
Yeah.
can anybody say no to these questions?
yeah.
So these questions to me are kind of like phony, like slipped in there. 15, trust, again, it's collegial trust. It's peer trust. It's not trust among the district, the people who are making the decision. So we
Okay.
agree on that.
We do.
Again, 17, collegial trust. Not how do people feel? It's how do I feel about my teacher and my grade level that I'm working with? How do the principals feel about working with the other principals in the district?
And district office.
And they said they really didn't answer that for the district office people.
It's-
They interpreted your questions as how do they do it with their colleagues, which are not the district office people. Their colleagues are their other principals, according to Webster's dictionary.
I think we say VUSD administrators,
Okay, well,
but I can understand how people, like when
you know,
you,
our principals are very adamant about this.
yeah. And when you have questions and items, people are gonna look at them a little bit different. That's why we don't ever report results if we only have 10 people for just that reason. But it's not, I'm not debating that point that people can view these things differently. Of course they can.
And then on 23, most admin are cordial.
Yeah,
What does that mean?
yeah.
Really? What does that tell us? When we have so much to do with our kids.
It's true. Rosemary, you're 100% right. We have a ton of work to do. And at 2 points, these are individual items. And we know statistically that individual items are not that reliable or valid in and of themselves. So if I came to you and I reported to you, administrators are cordial to each other, and I did my pretty graphs and I showed the whole thing, and you said to me, Alan, this is one item, like, what does that tell us? I would have to say, not much. But it's not just that one item. It's a whole bunch of items that go together that form this thing. Now, we can debate about the collegial trust thing, which I think is a fair point. But
Well, we could debate it, but the people who took the survey, most of them know what collegial means,
yeah,
and they don't look at that for the people that they work for.
that may well be
So
true.
that's just a fact.
Yeah,
The other thing is when we met on a Zoom, before we totally put this together,
yeah,
we had our old climate survey,
true.
and there was the page, it was a vertical graph.
Yeah, with
And
all
it was
the
about
color
our
lines on it.
administration and how they're doing, so we would know.
Yeah,
What do we need to give directions for? How are we supposed to do our job and lead people?
yeah,
Alan, I asked you 3 times specifically, are these same information, are we gonna get this to compare? And you promised me that we would, like it was, so we could compare apples to apples. And we didn't get that. And I am very disappointed because right now, this district needs that.
yeah. So 2 points. One, you're 100% right. And as I mentioned when I was doing the presentation, there are a number of the same items that came through that we compared. I showed you those graphs that compared over time. Now, to your point, did we ask all the same things? No, we didn't. And the reason that we didn't is because what's behind you on the wall? We took direction from district staff that said, this is where we're headed. Go measure that. And so
You
so
should
I
have said
don't,
yes.
but why would I not want to help a district to like be responsive to what they want to do?
I'm not telling you not to be, I'm not telling you.
But if
not
I,
to
but
do
if I
that,
did
but when I
everything,
said,
yeah,
it's very important in this district. I am very in touch with this community.
I know you
Okay?
do. And you have been
It
for
is
many
very,
years.
very important in this district to have that comparison of that page. You could still do this. I'm not saying to get away from that,
Yeah,
but it stopped.
yeah,
We relied on that.
yeah,
Our community and our workers want to put that down.
yeah. I fully
And they
understand.
were robbed and we paid a lot of money
Yeah,
for something that I thought we were getting,
yeah.
and we did.
Well, you actually got quite a bit of comparison over time. You did not get everything compared over time. That's true.
So, we're gonna move to the next trustee so we can get through this, and also at 8 o'clock, we're gonna come around again. But I know our student board members are gonna leave in 6 minutes, so let's go around, to everyone, and then we can do a second round of discussion. Trustee Kelly?
My question is about slide 8, the response rates.
Yeah.
And the range we saw, you know, parents at 12%, leaders at 81%. Can you talk to us a little bit about your interpretation of that? Is this the kind of thing where if people have complaints, they're gonna jump up and make the complaints, and a low response rate is indicative of general satisfaction? Or is it an indicator of apathy and frustration? Particularly, you know, we had the lowest for classified staff and parents, and I just was wondering, based on your experience with other districts and this district over many years, can you walk us through your thoughts about those response rates?
Sure. Generally, at least sort of like what the research would say is that generally people that respond to surveys, if you get low response rates, really low, then generally people that are really unhappy or really happy, but generally really unhappy, respond. And our response rates in February were quite low, and they were not what we needed them to be. Now, I will also say that the amount of surveys people have been filling out since 2020 is like risen extraordinarily. And I think people are probably also a little burned out on surveys. In fact, truth be told, there was a pause, the district staff decided to take a pause year for 1 year because people were just like over it. And our surveys were long. We were asking them a whole bunch of things. They took a long time. At the end of the day, what I most care about for your district is that we got to these numbers. Generally want to see something above 65 to 70% in a district, and we got there. It took longer than it typically takes. So I can't surmise what motivated people to take it, not take it. They're busy, lots is going on. We normally would collect data in the fall. We're collecting data in the winter, spring. It's one of the most busy times in schools, as you know. That could have had something to do with it. I don't have a sense of like how individuals might have responded to it individually. I think at the end, what you have to do is say, we got 75% of the teachers and 80% of the leaders and 62% of the kids, which is actually quite good. Yeah.
Trustee Morocco?
Okay, I agree with trustee Smithfield with a lot of what she said, so I appreciate she said a lot of what I was thinking. I am actually looking at the district level report, and there are a couple questions that I have tactical.
Please.
So for example, some of the questions, I'm looking at the student reports on trust, kindness, and compassion.
Yeah.
And you touched on this. You were saying almost all the questions were positive.
Yeah, worded affirmatively, yeah.
Right, were positive, but then there were some questions that weren't.
Yep.
Did you make adjustments in the outcomes for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so we do what's called reverse coding.
Okay.
So like so it doesn't mess up with the overall mean score.
Right.
You may, I don't know if you're curious, but do you want to know why we asked those negatively worded questions?
Probably because the meaning would come through a little bit more accurately.
That, and we're also looking sometimes, which drives us crazy, we're collecting this, sometimes people will just like put all fives.
Yeah, I got you.
And so it's like a fake good catch too. Yeah.
So then the other question was, there was one that showed up on, I believe it was for the classified employees. And I think it was somebody else. It might have been one of the ones, there was a question and I can't find it now.
Okay.
I'm looking, but it was, rarely do I ever feel as if my day will never end.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
It's double negative, like, so I was very surprised to see that.
Yeah, here's one of the challenges we have. When we use these instruments, we often use instruments that have already been published or been used on thousands of educators. And we've used them on thousands of educators. So when you have like a complete set of items, it's measuring something. Sometimes you get an item that's like clunky, or maybe you would read it and you'd be like, I don't quite get what that item is covering. The reason we keep it is because the items have all been tested for reliability and validity based on that set of items. And so to strip out one of those items could potentially change the validity and reliability of the entire set of items. So that's why, like, we don't put a lot of emphasis on an individual item. We put way more emphasis on it, and we tell you to focus on what's the overall
No,
construct.
I get that,
Okay.
but I'm just wondering if we know that there's a problem, I mean, I'm always cognizant of garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
so a
so it's
question like that raises a red flag for me.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering why we don't, maybe if it's possible to go back and readjust the previous values, if we're looking at them over time, to
Yeah.
take that, remove that question and going forward.
It is possible to do that, assuming it doesn't mess with the validity and reliability of the overall instrument that we've tested on thousands of people. So that's the only caveat, right? So then you have to say, is it worth that risk to get this other thing? One item is probably not going to make a significant difference on the overall value, but it's a fair question. Like,
Well, I saw it and it was like,
yeah, it's a
what does
little,
that mean?
yeah, it's.
So, and I noticed that the number was a low number,
Yeah,
but I think that it was designed to be a positive question, not
Yeah.
a negative, but
Yeah.
I think people were answering it as a negative.
oh, that's 100%.
Yeah, so that's why I was a little bit concerned there.
Yeah,
I
it's a
also
good
was
question.
concerned about that there might have been some statistical, I don't know, incompatibilities with asking one group about things at the district level and then not asking another group.
Yeah.
It makes it a little bit difficult to compare, I think.
Yeah. The questions that you saw, the comparisons over years, they were just exactly the same items that we asked in previous years. So we didn't change any of them, which may also be one of this, like, this item that you've identified as being worded a little strangely. That might have been in one of those like compare over time years. So then we just didn't mess with it to keep it consistent.
Okay, so going forward,
Yeah.
if we wanted to go forward and continue on doing these climate surveys, but climate surveys that actually meet our needs as board members when we're
Yeah.
making decisions. What would you recommend? Would you recommend that we completely start over with a brand new survey,
Yeah.
or what do you recommend?
That's a great question. And I think that's a question that you and district staff need to have, not me.
Okay.
Right? That's you all, listen, at the end of the day, I'm your tool. I provide you my best thinking, my best advice, my best counsel. I try to meet all the commitments I say that I'm gonna have. I've tried to do that for many, many years. And that's all I can do. Ultimately, if you all say to me, whoever the you all is in this case, measure like the color blue, and I think that that's going to do something of benefit to the district, then I'll go measure the color blue.
I see.
And so I think that some of this is some internal dialogue that needs to take place that doesn't actually involve me. So that would be my best counsel.
Pardon me, we're gonna dismiss our student board members and then we're gonna continue.
Do you want to
guys
have
are
any
welcome.
questions?
Oh, yes,
Do
questions.
any of you have any questions? By the way, you were the most awesome, all of you, been a great audience, but you guys are really rock stars, like taking notes and everything else. Should give you UCSD credit for that.
Concurrent.
No, I think the only question I have was already answered.
Okay, great, thank you.
No, you didn't.
So you guys are never forced to leave, but feel you need your rest and homework and all that. So thank you.
Yeah, and congratulations.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
See you next month.
Thank you all.
Yeah. We'll go around for one more round. And go ahead.
Did you want?
Of course. Yeah, I just wanted to let you go. It's
I forgot what it was gonna be. It was something to the effect of go around and maybe it'll come back.
Trustee Vargas?
I guess the only question, and this is like the last, I have more for Dr. Doyle, based on like, for this data, like, what do you see some next steps that you're gonna work on as well as, support staff, personnel?
Well, the data gives, as Alan pointed out, the data gives information about our planning for our vision, our mission, each of the three portraits. That's what it was designed around. So we'll use that with our staff to drill into it. An example that came out, a theme that's clear, is student voice. And student agency. So that's a conversation we would have directly tied to our learner portrait. So that's a really good example. So we would use it as a learner, as a tool for us to continue to impact the practice. The other thing to keep in mind with these surveys is that they're anonymous. And so it's extremely difficult to get high levels of participation because we don't know who's doing it and who's not doing it. We have to keep sending it out to people. We can't target audiences because we don't know who answered, who didn't. So that's one of the things, and we've been doing that for years. That's why it's hard to chase participation rates, because you don't know who participated and didn't. We just know the number. And by the way, all that data goes to UCSD. It does not go to the district. So they track it.
So my question is regarding classified results. Did you say that it was the same as years past in terms of the response rate? Did it stay constant?
About the same as years past.
And is there a way, I mean, would the data become valid, less valid if we said to a group of workers, we're gonna pay you 1 hour to sit and do this?
That would be glorious. My grandma is a cafeteria lady. Like she
sit
would have,
down and do this.
she would, as a classified person, she would have loved that.
Yeah.
No, that's,
I mean, I'm just wondering if that's a bad practice.
no. It respects people's time.
Trustee Smithfield?
Yeah, we used to fill it out when I was a teacher during our staff meetings.
Yeah, for example.
That's what we did this month, and so we already do that.
Yeah,
But
so that
I
on-
have nothing else, but thank you, Alan, and I loved working with you
Yeah.
these past 15, how many years have you been doing this?
Goodly number of years.
Yeah, and I was there from year one, so,
And I appreciate the spirited exchange.
well, hey, I'm gonna call it like it is.
Yeah.
You know.
Thank you. Thanks for nice words.
Trustee Kelly?
One last question for
Of
me.
course.
The student data around safety, physical
Yeah,
safety.
yeah.
How does our district compare to some other districts?
That's a good question. Generally, you're just right around the same.
So does that speak to the culture of school shooting epidemic in America and the mentality that
Yeah, I think our young people, and this would have been a great thing to ask our youth here, I think our young people are faced with increasing amounts of violence that surround them. And it's not just like face-to-face violence, it's online violence, it's online bullying, it's all of it. So we see these kind of trends around safety that cut across districts. So we've got a school violence epidemic on our hands in this country. So it's not surprising you see it here in Vista also.
Thanks, I agree.
Thank you, Julie.
Trustee Morocco?
Just piggybacking on that, the questions that were asked were about crime and violence, but it was also about bullying.
Yeah,
and teasing.
feeling, yeah.
Yes, so that was also contributing to that safety issue. I was kind of looking at it because I was thinking potentially it could be facilities. Is there something with the facilities?
Yeah, no,
Making them feel unsafe, but no.
but I'm really happy you identified that particular one because that's, our youth are being, bullied in many different venues and a lot of that bleeds into the schools, unfortunately.
Virtual.
Yeah.
So, gosh, I'm trying to remember what I had thought about what my question was. Oh, would you say overall this is an opinion, like the opinions expressed here are about how they feel about the learner portrait or about how we're implementing?
That's a good question. So the questions, like the student voice and choice questions, right?
Well, everybody.
Yeah. They're very, very closely in line with learner portrait. They're just the sort of shorthand that we try to tell people is like, think about the difference between like teacher is sage on the stage and guide on the side. So what does it look like if you organize a classroom that was much more organized around voice and choice? Your district actually does a really good job of this already. Rosemary was doing voice and choice before it was cool to do voice and choice. So this district's well poised to execute on these learner portraits in many ways. So, yeah. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Daly.
Yeah,
Appreciate
I'm
it.
glad it only took 30 minutes.
All right, do you guys need a break or go on to the next one?
They need a break.
4 minutes, 4 minutes.
And if you need any
4 minutes. 4
guidance
minutes.
on how to dress like a professor, I'm your guy.
All right.
4 minutes.
President Alvarado, I was the one that responded to the question rather than holding it to the end, so that's on me. You're disrupting your flow. So I apologize. I'm trying to run and take care of it. I can turn it on. Do you want to?
Don't I know?
Do you want to check? It's a very interesting. Good, how you doing? You have the patches.
No, I just wonder why your patches aren't centered on your elbow.
I want that to be because I think it's like this, yeah, it should be down here, right?
Gravity on there. Yeah.
Yeah,
That should be centered.
Yeah, no.
Is this a hand-me-down? Is this like a?
Yeah, I was just looking for
It's
power,
clearly it's clearly
just in case.
secondhand.
It's been a long several days and I had the computer with me, so I think we'll be okay.
My job is like. Yeah, that's why my wife.
Oh, okay, well, that's excellent.
But I'm curious as to, yeah, for example, values and the things that you're studying.
Yeah.
I don't see educational achievement or educational progress or excellence or anything like that.
It's, that's a good question. So I think what we're learning is that all of these things are like preconditions for that stuff. And you have to think, if you think about these things.
So you're setting up the conditions, but there's no actual measurement.
No, but then that's when you get the learner portraits, and that's when we're measuring
The next item on the agenda is 10C, Measure LL Micro Bond Workshop.
Good evening, President Alvarado, Vice President Kelly, and members of Board Trustees. For our presentation this evening, we're just going to go through some of our regular items, finance, general update on Beaubear, and take you through some of the action items this evening. There's nothing on consent calendar. And we don't want to go too deep in everything, but there is a spoiler alert. We do have good news with these action items, nearly $1 million coming back to Measure LL as we close out Vista High School's project. When you look at the financials for this, financials have not much changed from our last meeting. That's because we are holding steady on all items. As we pointed out the last meeting, we currently have $239,461,000 committed inside of Measure LA, either expense or committed for future expense. The big one has already been covered by Trustee Smithfield, and Trustee Morocco has been there too. When you go to the Beaubear site, everything's down. Everything is absolutely down. It is a privilege and phenomenal to watch this process unfold as we go through this, and we're getting ready to release our quarterly community update and some other items to the community as we follow up on all of our promises. The only thing we also want to report on Beaubear is that we will be making a wonderful announcement on October 10th. We can't reveal a lot more than that other than we'll be getting some national recognition for the Beaubear Elementary School design. We can't give you specifics because we are held by an embargo statement, but we hope to celebrate that on October 17th with our partners at UCSD at the UCSD Design Lab to celebrate the design process. All right. 3 action items for change orders this evening relate to 3 action items for notices of completion late. These 3 items are noted as 17I through K on your agenda this evening for the change orders and 17L through N on the notices of completions. If you recall, we have different phases of our construction on this particular project. We have done our best to indicate here on the metrics on the slide for you. When you see those parens, that's not a negative number to us. That means money coming back to us, where we're trying to communicate things a little differently, clearer. So the change order reflects a total contingency credit on this phase of 46,000, almost 46,100, and a final construction GMP amount change for about 5.9. The second item regarding structural steel. You will recall this was a difficult process with structural steel. There was actually a bankruptcy involved in all of this. Through all of this, we were able to work and partner with our general contractor on this items. Total contingency credit coming back to us here, 361,000, almost 362,000 when you do the rounding on this particular item. New revised GMP. Again, at the end of the process, you revise these GMPs. When we look at our final item for this evening, a total final construction GMP of this larger amount. This is regarding a variety of design modifications and other things that may have been necessary. But it lies for not blessing. And the total amount of that contingent credit here, about 670,000 total, all in all, 1,077,000, almost 78,000 coming back to Measure LL in this. Those are not reflected in the financials presented earlier. The intent would not be financially within accounting practices or appropriate because we have to know the board's decision on these items. So that is the conclusion of this evening. Again, the board action items, you have 3 change orders that relate, if they're accepted, back to the 3 notices of completion later this evening.
Trustee Smithfield, you're first.
I'm good.
Trustee Kelly,
Also great.
Trustee Morocco.
I do have one quick question.
Yeah.
If we don't accept this money coming back to us, what happens? Like what, I mean, it kind of seems like.
Contractor keeps it, ma'am.
Oh, okay, no.
Contractor continues.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny. I was like, okay, well, just in case we didn't, what would happen? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
For the Booger project, I know that we split into 2 rounds for DSA. Where are we at with the actual building project and the DSA approval?
Thank you. To clarify what I believe the intent is, we have 2 phases of construction. The first does not require DSA, that's for demolition. The second does require DSA, Division of State Architect approval. We are approved by the Division of State Architects and on track on that project, so we're fully approved.
Great.
And Dr. Wilshire, just let them know when we anticipate phase 2 starting.
We will put that in the Friday letter with all of the items for that, but we're just about a couple months out where we start to come out of the ground.
So we'll let you know in the Friday
Yeah.
letter. It's coming up.
Yeah, and I don't have any comments or questions, but I'm just happy we're getting $1 million. So that's great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next is 11, the consent calendar. Agenda items 11 through 16, all matters listed on the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine and will be enacted by the board in one motion in the form listed below. There will be no discussion on these items prior to the time the board votes on the motion unless members of the board, the staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar. The superintendent and staff recommend approval of all consent calendar items. Can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by trustee Kelly and seconded by trustee Morocco. Any further discussion?
Also, one really quick thing. I'm very happy about the lactation accommodation. This, the policy on that. Very
Yes.
happy about that.
Any other further discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the consent calendar. All in favor of approving 11A, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, 11A is approved. I'm sorry, 11 is approved. Which is, that's everything in there.
11 through 16.
11 through 16, yes. All right, next on the agenda is 17A, ratify and approve purchase orders.
I make a motion to ratify and approve purchase orders as presented.
So moved. I'll second it. It's moved by trustee Kelly and seconded by myself. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17A, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
So 17A is approved for four ayes and 1 abstention. Right, trustee Morocco. 17B, resolution 25-09 of the Vista Unified School District declaring sufficient textbooks or instructional materials for each student. Hi, good evening. You may begin. You get to present.
We're just here.
Okay, I'm like, okay.
Yes.
I have a question. Have all of our elementary teachers received their math curriculum
They
in total,
They have,
every module,
yes.
okay? 4 through the end, because some
For the
people
fifth.
said they hadn't received 4 on.
There was one glitch with the math publisher who sent one batch of materials to one school that did not include fourth. And I was informed that they received it either Monday or Tuesday this week.
So
Tuesday
they
this
have
week.
it, and then my other question, I think I kind of mentioned this last time around, for our DLI classes and curriculum. I'm gonna forget the name of what program it is. But it wasn't available in the Spanish part that the DLI classes need. I don't know if it's iReady or not Lexia, but one of those, if maybe you could check with, the DLI teachers, not at Grapevine, check with them at either of the other 2 schools. And, cause they were saying that they needed, I'm sorry, I had it in my notes last month.
Yeah, absolutely what you think.
Any further discussion or questions on 17B? Seeing none, we will call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17B, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Just-
opposed?
Actually, President Alvarado, did we have a motion and a second for this? I make a motion to approve 17B.
Yes, I was
To ma-
mistaken.
Is it a, am I?
To approve the resolution.
We're on B right now, correct?
We're on B. We're on B.
Resolution that's inclusive of the resolution.
Okay.
We're good.
I still make a motion to approve item 17B, the resolution declaring sufficient textbooks or instructional materials.
They'll sign it.
Okay, moved by trustee Kelly. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving seventeen B, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, seventeen B is approved 5-0. 17C, approve resolution 25-10 to piggyback on the Downey Unified School District bid number 23/24-11 awarded to Apple.
That we approve item 17C.
I second.
Okay, moved by trustee Morocco, seconded by trustee Kelly. Any further discussion or questions about 17C? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17C, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 17C is approved 5-0. Next is 17G, approve resolution 25-11 to piggyback on the Midwestern Higher Education Compact.
I move that we approve item 17D.
Second.
Moved by trustee Morocco, seconded by trustee Kelly. Any further discussion on 17D? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17D, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 17D is approved 5-0. Next is 17E, approve resolution 25-12, authorizing the use of South County Support Services Agency bid 21-22-SC11-01, awarded to Creative Plus Sales.
I move that we approve item 17E.
I second.
Moved by trustee Morocco, seconded by trustee Kelly. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17E, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 17E is approved 5-0. Next is 17F, approve resolution 25-14 to piggyback on the Sourcewell contract number 091521-NAF awarded to the National Auto Fleet Group.
Make a motion to approve 17F, the purchase of a boom truck.
I second.
Moved by trustee Kelly, seconded by trustee Morocco. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17F, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 5-0. It's approved. Next is 17G, request for emergency waiver of competitive bidding requirements, PCC 20113 at Vista Academy of Performing Arts. Are there any questions about this before we get a motion? Go ahead.
Okay, so is this? I know VAPA has a lot of issues. Is this something that is an ongoing thing?
No, ma'am, this pertains to the beginning of the year. There was a burst piping due to the age of the piping. This is the flooding that occurred at VAPA. And the reason for the request of this sort of bidding process is because we wish to elevate and escalate our timeline on providing and restoring the facility. At this time, this is listed temporarily as a restricted resource project, budgeted. So that way we can go through the insurance process and allow for the insurance timeline to reimburse us. But the school is open and we really want to be able to fix these facilities for the children.
I agree. I don't want our children exposed to toxic stuff. Okay, so I move that we approve 17G.
Moved by trustee Morocco,
Second.
second by trustee Kelly. Any further questions or discussion?
Yeah, what's the timeline on this one, Sean? If approved?
The timeline is as soon as this is approved, it's going to go back to the contractor. We're hoping that they're going to start within 5 working days. And then from there, they're going to get us a elevated time schedule. If it had not been approved this evening, we would be looking at 60 to 90 more days for the bid process.
That should be addressed, by January for sure.
That is the goal.
Okay, yeah, perfect. And I did hear from teachers about this and, children having to walk longer for bathroom breaks.
That is 100%
And that
accurate.
takes, time away from the academics.
Yes, 100% accurate.
All right, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. We'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17G, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 17G is approved 5-0. Next is 17H, approve resolution 2513, authorizing use of Sourcewell contract 092920-JFA awarded to JF Petroleum. Any questions on 17H?
Is this a piggyback?
No, this is not a specific piggyback. And to clarify, I understand the company is called JF Petroleum. This is actually for electric charging devices. Many petroleum companies are now engaged in supporting electric charging devices. So this
Okay,
is,
so there's a problem then, because it says on the attachment, it says Board of Trustees, resolution number 25-13, piggyback to purchase electric vehicle charging station.
yeah, I apologize. There's a piggyback that's inclusive with
Okay.
with the purchase order request as well.
Okay, all right. thank
Yeah, I'm
you.
just looking down. I apologize for this process. Previously, the board has approved many of these piggybacks. There is a new state requirement that requires us to take it back to you. So it's also gonna take a little bit of time for me to adjust that we're gonna have to include a piggyback every time we do this and show the board that you are agreeing again to a piggyback you previously approved.
I see. I'm just wondering if my colleagues are not opposed to it, or if it is allowable that we could maybe just go through this list for all the piggybacks and approve them at once.
I think that was the last one, but
Okay, is that the last one? Oh,
That
well.
is,
I tried.
we can,
But there's a new obligation.
yeah,
to-
we can check on this, whether that's.
There's a new obligation.
We would have put it in consent. if we could.
Piggybacks.
Yeah.
There's a new law or
But
regulation.
that they have to be individually voted on?
Oh,
or-
we'll check on that.
we'll
Okay.
continue.
All right,
Yeah.
well, I move that we approve item 17H.
I second.
Moved by trustee Morocco, seconded by trustee Kelly. Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17H, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, 17H is approved 5-0. Next is 17I, Vista High School Increment 1 Building Final Construction Cost Change Order.
I move that we approve 17I.
I second.
Moved by trustee Morocco, seconded by trustee Kelly. Any further questions or discussion item?
This is the one that you presented.
These are the three items that were previously presented in the measure L.
Yeah. All right, all in favor of approving 17I, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? 17I is approved 5-0. Next is 17J, Vista High School Increment 2 Structural Steel Final Construction Cost Change Order.
I make a motion to approve 17J.
My second.
Moved by trustee Kelly, seconded by trustee Morocco. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17J, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? 17J is approved 5-0. Next is 17K, Vista High School Increment 2 Classroom Buildings Final Construction Cost Change Orders.
Move that we approve 17K.
And second.
Moved by trustee Morocco, seconded by trustee Kelly. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17K, say aye. Any opposed? 17K is approved 5-0. Next is 17L, accept work and filing of notice of completion for Vista High School Increment 2 Structural Steel for Measure LL. I'll move to approve 17L.
Second.
Moved by myself, trustee Alvarado, seconded by trustee Kelly. Any further discussion?
So is this, how, is this the same as what was presented, or what is?
Yes, ma'am. So you first must approve the change order, and then after approving the change order, we can issue the notice of completion for each of those change orders, and this will close out this project.
Any other questions? All right, all in favor of approving 17L, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 17L is approved 5-0. Next is 17M, accept work and filing of notice of completion for Vista High School Increment 1 for Measure LL.
I move, we move to approve, thank you, 17M.
Second.
Moved by trustee Morocco, seconded by trustee Kelly. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17M, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 17M is approved 5-0.
Make a motion to approve 17N.
Let me
Oh,
read
you
it.
want to read it?
Well, that's part of it,
Okay.
because sometimes people aren't paying attention.
Go for the gusto.
I'm serious, like
Yeah.
sometimes people aren't reading and they might say aye and not be cognizant about what we're approving. So that's why I like to read it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we are on N, 17N, accept work and filing of notice of completion for Vista High School Increment 2 Classroom Buildings for Measure LL.
Make a motion to approve 17N.
Second.
Okay, moved by trustee Kelly, seconded by trustee Morocco. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17N, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, 17N is approved 5-0. Next is 17O. Approve resolution 25-08, amendment of the Conflict of Interest Code pursuant to the Political Reform Act of 1974.
Make a motion to approve 17O.
Moved by trustee Kelly. I'll second it. Any further discussion on 17O?
What is it?
This is the document that all of the board members and the executives have to sign in terms of their financial interests.
Okay.
And every year, the state of California makes adjustments to the language. And so you're just, actually, the purpose of this is that you're recognizing that there are adjustments to the language prior to filling out the conflict of interest form.
Gotcha.
Basically investments.
Okay. Okay, so this is like that form
Yeah,
700.
yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I noticed that there's some changes made.
Mhm.
Is that changes that we initiated or is
No.
that?
No,
those are
this is a
changes to the
state document. The
Okay.
purpose of this is that you're, as a board member, acknowledging you're aware of the changes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17O, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? All right, 17O is approved 5-0. Next, we have 17P and we have one speaker, Sue Martin.
Good evening to the Vista community. My name is Sue Martin. I'm a long-term Vista resident and a retired USD teacher. I'm speaking in front of the board again tonight about the lack of actual transparency within this district. Last month, I spoke about the $143.1 million sitting in the district reserve account. I also spoke about the closure of Rancho Minerva, resulting in the overcrowding of Madison and Roosevelt. Tonight, I want to speak about the agenda item placing Sean Loescher, interim assistant superintendent of business services, as the actual assistant superintendent, thereby dropping the interim. We need some transparency, please. Does Mr. Loescher have the experience for this position? This is a very important position in any school district, but particularly in VUSD. Mr. Loescher does not seem to have the experience for this position. So I must ask the board, what will you do? Is this just another rubber stamp for Matt Doyle? Are you not in a position to provide oversight for this district? Please do it. Sean is not the person for this position. Further, is he keeping his position also as facility director? Will he be drawing two salaries? Will the underpaid classified personnel in business services be expected to carry the load for the inexperienced Mr. Loescher? We need transparency on these items. This is a really important position, probably the most important position in any school district. And experience matters. Mr. Vargas, you're up for re-election this year. Will you provide the necessary oversight on this issue, or will you once again ask to vote last and then vote with the board majority? 8 years in this seat, running for another 4. Please do something. I'm imploring this board to take this issue very seriously. We need a qualified, experienced assistant soup of business services. Please do another posting and search. Hire an experienced, qualified person for this extremely important position. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Horton. All right, so yes, I would like Rachel to explain the process on what has transpired for this position.
So Dr. Loescher has served as the interim assistant superintendent since July 1 of this school year. Classified HR is required to follow the Personnel Commission rules. The Personnel Commission oversees the merit system, and the selection and promotion of candidates are based solely on qualifications. So based on qualifications and experience required. And so the Personnel Commission would deem all of the eligibility list that they are qualified, and the rules and regulations include an application process, meet the qualifications in the job description. They participate in a qualifications appraisal interview with 3 sitting CBOs in the county. They're placed on an eligibility list. They participate in a final interview, and then the recommendation is made by the upcoming supervisor. And so before the board tonight is a recommendation for approval of the employee agreement for Dr. Sean Loescher as the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services.
Can you speak to what the Personnel Commission does? A little bit more detail?
Sure. So the Personnel Commission oversees the merit system. And so started many years ago in order to bypass just specific people, selecting specific people, specific supervisors selecting people that they would like to bring in without going through a qualification process. And so that is completely done by the classified HR part of the house, and they it's ultimately approved by the Personnel Commission, and there are rules and regulations that they must follow.
Trustee Kelly, questions?
Yeah, can you speak to the choices that the board has at this juncture and what that means in terms of the timing of replacing, filling this position for Assistant Superintendent of Business Services?
So originally, back in July, the interim position was a provisional. The Personnel Commission does not allow us to go on a lengthy amount of time for an interim. We must find a selection at a certain point. And so 3 months ago, we started that process to go through the Personnel Commission just to get us through the 45-day budget, the interim, and unaudited actuals that we're due in September. And so interim is due this December. And so the process was, and the plan was to fill this position by October in the fall.
Thank you. Trustee Morocco?
Yeah, so given that we just tonight approved a new board policy, policy 4111, recruitment and selection. That reads that it's the governing board is committed to employing suitable qualified individuals to effectively carry out the district's vision, mission, and goals, and believes that students benefit when district staff reflects that racial, ethnic, linguistic, and cultural diversity of the district. The superintendent or designee shall develop fair, transparent recruitment selection processes and procedures that ensure individuals are selected for employment in the district based on demonstrated knowledge, skill, and competence, and not on any bias, personal preference, or unlawful discrimination. Additionally, the superintendent or designee shall, through recruitment and selection process procedures, seek to establish and maintain a diverse staff, including the active recruitment from institutions and organizations that serve populations underrepresented among district employees. I don't think that we've done that with this job posting.
So the 4100s are for certificated employees. So this would have to follow the Personnel Commission. The certificated side of the house cannot have any participation in that process.
There's nowhere in here that it says certificated in this board policy.
I understand.
So I would say that if it does not say that, it would apply across the board. So I would say, given that we have just approved this policy, that it might be a little bit premature to go forward. We might want to do a search based on this new board policy that we just.
So based on the board policy and the Personnel Commission, that board policy is being followed because the Personnel Commission cannot put anybody on the eligibility list that is not deemed qualified or has the experience that's outlined in the job description.
And meets the underserved designation that we have, I think this is to coincide with our equity policy. And so, I mean, I think that we kind of might want to make a good faith effort at trying to find somebody that represents or, reflects the racial, ethnic, linguistic, and cultural diversity of the district. And the other thing is, I also strongly oppose seating CBO before the new board, this close to an election and before the new board is seated. That's something that the new board members are gonna have to contend with. And we don't want, and it's not fair to Sean either, to put him in this position and then we see a new board who doesn't want him and then they end up firing. So I'm really just, I'm opposed. and it's not anything against Sean. Sean's a great guy, but I just think that in this right now, right here, right now, this is not the time. And we just passed this policy. It might be good to give it some breathing room.
Trustee Vargas?
Rachel, when did we post the job posting for this?
Because I didn't post it, I want to say it was 2 months ago, so about a month after taking over the interim, because we needed to go through the personnel commission and they had to ready to post, and they actually advertised it in multiple venues besides just Edgewing, so.
Got it. And if this is approved tonight, are we gonna replace the current role that Sean performs?
That
That would be a
that wouldn't be
conversation
our
we would bring
decision,
back
yeah.
to the board. It would remain empty until the board has a discussion about that.
Got it. And do we have authority, for example, like if we want to appoint Chris as an applicant that didn't apply for this position, could we do that?
No,
Why
you would
not?
have to, that is required to go through the personnel commission procedures.
Well, what if we vote on it tonight? What if we vote on Chris getting appointed as CBO?
Doesn't
What are
matter.
the repercussions?
It wouldn't go through. It has to, you can only
Is it a
approve
lawsuit or
somebody,
what's the process?
it would be overturned.
By-
So, by the personnel commission.
Okay, my next question is.
This has nothing to do with it. We're not talking about appointing any other candidate.
Yeah, your point is not well taken. He did not interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, my next question is about process and timeline. So we have obviously the interim, you know. And this is more for Dr. Doe, you know, this is a recommendation that's coming before us. So
Yes.
in your opinion, do you think Sean has the capacity to carry us forward? As relates to this role?
Yes.
Okay. No further
Trustee?
questions?
Trustee Smithfield?
Just a couple things, I just don't understand if everybody's not feeling comfortable, why it can't just be reopened and reposted, but we don't need to talk about that. I won't be voting on this I will be abstaining because I believe there's no way on this God's green earth I should be voting for this position when I'm walking off. I don't believe Julie and I don't believe Cipriano at this point should be seating somebody for a new board that could have totally different visions. And I think the timing is bad. So there won't be a vote for me. And the other thing is I brought this up the other day to you, Dr. Doyle, and I was shocked not to see it changed because it has brought questions and concerns and very negative look on us because Sean has had on his social media that he has been the assistant soup. Not that he's been interim, but he's announced to the world that he has already gotten this job. Not cool. It makes us look bad. It makes us look like we're doing things underhandedly. And if it maybe would have been taken down, I wouldn't have even mentioned it because you would have mentioned it and he would have said, oh yeah, I made a mistake. But it's still here today.
And my comment is, just responding to a board firing or, an assistant super. We have one employee. Our employee is a superintendent of schools. The board does not engage in firing or hiring other employees in the district. That's not the job of the board to hire or fire. So that's just my comment on it.
Well, I will comment on that because the board does have the right to tell the superintendent to fire that assistant superintendent if they don't feel that the placement is correct. So the board doesn't do it, but he does.
All right, so, we've had discussion. Any other questions for?
I do have a personal statement and I'm gonna make a motion to approve 17P. And my statement is that I was elected to do a job and part of that job is to keep our district leadership staffed in this role. We've been vacant for already a number of months, and I see it as an urgent thing, not something to put off till later. So I'm still in the seat. I have a job to do, so I would encourage my fellow trustees to consider that point.
All right. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. We've discussed it.
Wait a second.
Who's second? I'm sorry.
I made a motion
I motion.
and she seconded, Trustee Kelly seconded.
Sorry.
Mhm. All right, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17P, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstention?
Nay.
All right, so 17P is approved with 3-1 with 1 abstention, which is Trustee Smithfield. All right, next on the agenda is 18, but there's not other people. Okay.
The workshop.
Yeah, the workshop. All right, so 19A, the workshop. Right now, we're gonna put the workshop regarding the facilities and Vita moving to
The request.
the request, right? That would be for October 24th at 5 p.m.
I might be late. I have a work obligation in Laguna Beach that day and I don't know what time it ends, so if
You want to
traffic,
move it up to 6?
if it's the will of the board,
Yeah,
If we move it to 6:30, Honolulu has a reclassification ceremony that I would like to attend, so,
At what time?
at Honolulu, it's a
what time?
reclassification. Oh, it's 5:30 to 6:30.
Like maybe 6:30, 8:30?
I have a work commitment, so I'm not sure if I can get it off, but I will find out tomorrow.
okay, I can make the 24th and you can make it if it's later.
I hope.
You can make it if it's later.
Like, yeah,
I
I
mean-
would just come late. I don't, it
Okay.
doesn't matter. And it's right across town, so I could probably just scoot out after.
Okay, and then Trustee Smithfield, can you make it? And you may or may not, but that's the majority of the board.
Mhm.
So, seeing that it's time sensitive, we're gonna go ahead and schedule it for the 24th at 6. Did I hear 6 or 6:30? 6:30?
30,
6:30.
feel better.
Yeah, the schedule whenever you want, I'll come. I can
Okay,
invite-
6:30 on the 24th for that meeting.
Sounds good.
And, all right, any requests for other agenda items? All right, seeing none. Any reflections, comments?
Comments? Question, I was asked by a former board member, and I actually asked Sean this a couple weeks ago, when they're gonna have the ribbon cutting for Vista High. It's way overdue. The second thing I would like is, I'd like to see the progress that our DLI students are making. At Grapevine, since they're our first school and they've started middle school. So I'd like to see their progress, no student names. The other thing is also we have newcomers and they were going to Rancho Minerva. And now they're going to different schools and there's some big confusion on how their instruction is supposed to take place, what the course thing is. It's primary language, and some people call it primary language, some people call it heritage. They're the same thing. Heritage is used in a primary language class. There's a feeling that the newcomers aren't getting enough English to get them into the school. So I would like for some report on that or a letter. That can be a Friday letter. And
Friday
then the last thing is back to the GLAD. I have to take a deep breath in this. San Diego County Office of Education is willing this month, they have it on their calendar, to come to our district and do a training for our teachers in GLAD and other districts, for our secondary teachers in October. And then they have the second one, the date's up for the second one of the 5 days. It'll cost us $1,100 as opposed to $2,500 per person. San Diego County has it, they're ready to go, and Orange County is nowhere near there. Our teachers in the middle school and at Rancho Buena Vista High School want this training now. They don't want it to be on pause for whatever reason. Somebody decided we're gonna pause it. And they're using Orange County as an excuse.
So
When San Diego's ready to do it for us right here, right now.
So, yeah, we'll do some follow up on that. So I
Well,
heard
it is this month, so you're gonna have to let them know.
a present,
Follow up on it.
a presentation on DLI, all schools using all data points, not just a cast, but all data points.
Well, what I wanna know is, what's the progress? We have our first class of went to middle school. Were they ready for middle school in both English and Spanish? Because we were assured by the county, if we had done this right, given the teachers support, put teachers in it that they wanted to, that by this time they would all be well.
So like
at grade school.
reclassification and cast, probably.
Yes.
And then newcomer Friday letter, and then we'll look into.
Yeah, I have my notes.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing to add to the DLI is just comparison for those that aren't part of the DLI program, and so what's the difference in academic?
So reclassification rates for kids that are English language learners in the program
Maybe
versus
English
out.
language learners also.
Oh, yeah, yeah, sure.
We'll do both. I know what you're asking.
All of it.
Yeah, and then,
So, and I'm
then-
specifically letting you know that the reason I'm asking this because the concern was specifically for our GLI students.
All right.
and then the second request, this is a request that I made about a year and a half ago. We were supposed to bring back an accent to rename something in honor of Rich Alderson. And so that has not happened yet, so just want to make sure you get a status from me.
Anything else? Seeing none, I'll adjourn this meeting. 8:56.